conversation has taken a turn for the worse. The ogre makes some grunts in giant. Another two ogres step out from behind boulders. The large ogre in front of you raises his great club. Roll for initiative. Initiative? Oh, that means combat. How does that work? I wish I was more prepared. Well, brace yourselves, adventurers, because today on 5e Fundamentals we will cover basic combat in Dungeons & Dragons. I'm Russell Kirkby and this is 5e Fundamentals, a web series where we cover the most basic and essential rules of Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Today we're going to cover initiative and your basic combat options, actions, movement, bonus actions. Then we're going to talk about reactions and some other special maneuvers at the end. As always, it's important to note that all the rules in D&D, in fact in any role-playing game, are based on a social contract and are almost always arbitrated by the game master. I personally am an advocate of using as few rules as possible until you need them. But until you know them all, just do your best and have fun. The rules are a tool, not a crutch. If you're the DM, adapt them as you see fit. I, for one, get the rules wrong all the time, and you should never feel bad about it. At the end of the day, it's about role-playing, having fun, and telling a great story. And if you enjoy this video, hit the big red button and subscribe, because every time you don't subscribe to this channel, a cute, cuddly baby owlbear dies at the hands of an evil cultist. Alright? Alright, down to business. Now, before combat, the DM will generally call for an initiative roll. This roll determines who acts in what order during each round of combat. To work out your initiative, you just roll a d20 and add your dexterity modifier, which you'll find on your character sheet here. The DM is going to collect everyone's initiative rolls and sort them out into a sequence. Basically, this is how you will know whose turn it is. Right, now we're going to break combat into three main sections. Things that you can do on your turn, things that you can do on other creatures' turns, and extra maneuvers. Depending on the circumstances, they can be combined or used separately. Firstly, remember that everything that happens in combat in D&D 5e happens during a turn, and a turn is considered to be around 6 seconds of story time. So if you ever need to figure out what can happen during someone's turn, keep in mind it has to happen in less than 6 seconds. You can move, you can take an action, and maybe, depending on the circumstances, you might get to take a bonus action. Remember, standard actions include the attack action and casting most spells. These are the most common things that you're likely to do during your action. Note that you can also pick up, sheath, or draw a weapon as a free action at the start or end of your turn. It costs no actions or movement, but you can only take one of these free actions in a turn. What you can't do is replace movement for an action or an action for a bonus action. They're not interchangeable. Believe it or not, this covers you taking an action. Officially, however, this usually means the attack action, casting most spells, ones with a casting time of 1 action, pushing or grappling an opponent, attempting to hide, intimidating an enemy. You get the idea, right? Movement. Unless you're restrained for some reason, you can generally move up to your character's speed, which is a number expressed in feet per turn. For most creatures, this is about 30 feet or 6 squares. But depending on the DM, your movement might also include jumping a gap, running up a dragon's spine, or rappelling down a castle wall, and might require some kind of ability check too, like athletics. Certain kinds of terrain can be considered difficult terrain, and that can, at the DM's discretion, halve your movement speed. Keep in mind that you can divide up your full amount of movement and use it in increments before and after your action and your bonus action. In this way, you might kill an enemy and then move to the door, for example, and then take the hide action. Or you might attack an enemy here and then move up to an ally to heal them. Just remember, when moving away from an enemy that is within 5 feet of you, try to take the disengage action, otherwise you will provoke an attack of opportunity, and those have been known to be fatal. Bonus actions. Bonus actions are a special action that can be specific to a class trait, racial feature, a feat or ability, or more commonly a spell. Now, unless specified by the rules or the DM, you can use bonus actions at any time during your turn. But even if you have more than one bonus action available because you're a super duper multi-classing rogue cleric barbarian, you can only take one bonus action per turn. So what this means is that you cannot rage, then cast Grasping Vine, and then try and hide in the shadows. No. You can, however, move in as many increments as you like, take a standard action, use one bonus action per turn. Remember, a turn is 6 seconds. So, for example, a rogue might run in, knock her bow, fire an arrow, and then try and hide behind the pillar. Take some time to familiarize yourself with all your spells and actions and bonus actions so that you feel comfortable knowing what your character is capable of doing during combat. I strongly suggest you try using online tools such as D&D Beyond, linked below, because they will automatically produce a list of actions and bonus actions that you can use on your combat turn, making your life a lot easier. If you don't have access to those tools, ask your DM to help you out with your character and making a list of actions for you. When it's the enemy's turn, or even your companion's turn, you may find that you have abilities or spells on your character sheet that have the keyword reaction in their description. This means that you can only utilize this ability when it is not your turn. The classic example of a reaction in 5e is when a creature within melee range, that is to say 5 feet of you, moves away. This provokes a reaction called an attack of opportunity, which is a special free attack with a melee weapon against that creature. You only get one reaction per full round of combat, but as soon as your turn has been had, the reaction ability refreshes and you can use another reaction for the next round, even if you have not taken your turn yet. This gives a little more interaction to the battle and makes it really worthwhile to stay tuned into the combat even if it's not your turn. Extra maneuvers. One of the most useful maneuvers you can perform on your turn is to ready or hold an action. This maneuver is directly connected to a reaction. This means that on your turn you can move into a position and then hold your action, waiting for a trigger which you can specify to the DM. As soon as the door opens, I fire. Another example of holding an action might be when you have only got a melee weapon and your enemy is out of range during your turn. Okay, so the harpy is 10 feet off the ground. I'm going to move up to my druid companion and hold my attack for when the harpy comes within melee range. In this case, the player is hoping that the harpy will attack them or their companion, or maybe the druid will cast Thorn Whip to drag the harpy into range. In any case, the plan is that when the trigger condition is met, the player will be able to expend their reaction at that moment and unleash their melee attack. Remember that when you hold an action, you can only hold it for one full combat round. When it comes back to your turn in the initiative order, you can choose another action or continue to hold the previous one. There are some abilities that don't have a specific descriptor or keyword on how to use or activate them. For example, Divine Smite is a Paladin class feature which has its own set of conditions, specifying that you must hit a creature with a melee weapon in order to activate the spell. Thus, according to the rules as written, a Paladin must wait to have a successful hit on an enemy target before declaring that they wish to discharge their Divine Smite, which would add damage to their standard weapon attack. So the main thing to remember if you are a new player, for initiative you roll a d20 plus your dex modifier, which is here. On your turn, you have an action, X amount of movement, which can be split up into various increments, and a possibility of a bonus action. And when it's not your turn, if conditions are met, you might get an opportunity to use up to one reaction per full combat round. If you're ever unsure, talk with your DM and find out in advance what options are available to your character. Discuss when you can or cannot use a specific ability so that it's clear. Keep in mind the DM may want to change how specific rules or conventions work, either to suit their game style or their campaign setting. I played a game once where cantrips were always bonus actions. Remember, the rules are a guide. They're there to help you tell stories and have fun. Every DM has the absolute authority to run their game however they want. Ideally, I suggest that you should know the rules before you break them, but if you're still learning the rules, then just make sure that you and your fellow players are having fun. As always, if you like this content, hit the big red button and subscribe.
Kansas anymore.
Well, we're going. We don't need roads.
Hello, hello, Internet.
Greetings.
Hi, everyone. We're here, and you have no idea in the background what happened for us to get this going tonight, but we're here. Hopefully, everything's working. You guys can hear us. All right, so I'm just going to get it started off. If you're just joining us, we are The Game Podcast, hosted by Dungeon Studios. We go beyond live play and dive deep into every topic from session zeros to campaign heroes. With lively debates, thoughtful analysis, and plenty of laughs, our weekly podcast is the perfect companion for any D&D fan. We stream live and interact with our chat on Facebook every Monday, almost every Monday, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, and it's about 2 p.m. New Zealand time. How are you doing tonight, Russell?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I'm just doing some pretend sign language so that we can look like politicians or something. I don't know. But I don't actually know any sign language, but I mean, I know a couple of signs, but they're probably not appropriate right now.
That's too funny.
In any case, here we are. We're back, and welcome to the game.
Welcome.
I'm Russell, and she's Giddies.
Giddis, that's right. I know sometimes we forget and use real names, but yeah, I do like Giddis. If you're just joining us again, I'm going to give a real quick recap. Giddis is the name of my BBEG in my homebrew campaign that we are just about to finish. And so when it came time to pick a name for myself, my husband was like, yeah, why don't you go with Giddis? Because then she can live on forever. And I love that.
Right.
So she's going to.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All
so,
right.
Yeah.
You want to start it off?
Let's get going. Let's talk some shit.
All right. Well, I mean, before we talk some shit, I guess we're going to do... I don't have much for Retcon Rewind. I think we've been a pretty solid podcast the last few times. So there's nothing I need to correct or anything I need to clarify from previous episodes. However... if you've been following us, you will notice that Doc is not here with us again tonight. I'm just going to keep pumping out excuses. If you follow him on his Facebook, you might have noticed that he has been picked up by DC Comics and he's going to play Bane in the next Batman movie.
Yeah, that's right.
Pretty sure that's it. So that's why he's not here with us tonight. We'll see if he will join us next week, but... We did decide to let him out of the dungeon for a little bit, and now he got picked up by DC Comics. That will teach me.
I can't help myself. I'm fucking with my camera.
I kind of noticed. I wasn't looking at first.
I just can't help myself. It's just one of those things. It's there, and you just have to twiddle with it. And I'm sorry.
No problem.
I apologize in advance. Well, all right. So
I'm sure our live viewers are entertained.
They probably don't give a damn. They're probably not even watching us. They're listening to us in their cars or something. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what people do with the internet?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Anyway, we have things to talk about and stuff to do and all of that. So
yes, stuff and things. All right. So I'm sure you're looking at my notes and it's daunting. Did you hear anything about... this is kind of an ongoing thing, actually, but... I guess there was recent news about the D&D lawsuit between TSR and Wizards. Do you know anything about this?
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you're not been around for the last 30 years, TSR, tactical, what are they called? Tactical something? I don't remember.
I meant to look that up and I forgot.
I mean, what was it? Tactical something.
I'm sure I could look it up right now. What does
anyway, I know the T is technical.
Mean? Oh, well, see, this says total shareholder return. That is completely wrong. Google doesn't know me. All right. Anyway.
That's all right. In any case, they were the people that, when Gary Gygax created Dungeons and Dragons, that was the name of the company that they formed.
Right.
So, the original company. And as far as I know, after he died, his sons recently started up a new version of it or something. And there may even be another version of it, too.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Hey, Avery.
You're about to tell us how that all works. Hey, Avery's back. Awesome.
All right. So here's the thing. I'm pretty sure Doc touched on this like during one of my very first times joining the podcast. And Doc
Right.
is the keeper of all lore like this. He knows every little bit of detail. So I wish he was here, but I'm going to try to cover this as comprehensively as I can without like boring us all to death.
Right.
So if you don't know what's going on, there is a lawsuit between TSR and Wizards of the Coast. However, I had to dig into the timeline. Actually, this is what I did first. I know that Doc loves the YouTube channel Dungeons and Discourse. If you have not checked it out, I didn't know anything about it until Doc started talking about it. And then I had to go check out Dungeons and Discourse. And she's just
She's great.
so entertaining. So
She's awesome.
I thought if anybody's going to have information on this that I can take in a short amount of time, it's going to be her. And I was not disappointed. And so if you want this information in a much, what's the word I'm going to say, smaller tidbit, because we're going to really break this out a bit. Go check out her YouTube, and she also provides a link that has like this whole timeline that I'm about to go through, because this is what I had to do for it to make sense into my head. What's going on with this lawsuit?
Right.
There's this whole timeline. So let's just for clarity's sake, Dungeons and Discourse does this. I'm going to do this. She the various iterations of TSR, she calls TSR 1, TSR 2, number 3, number 4, however, because there's various entities that go by TSR, apparently. Okay, so gonna go through this. So 1974, 73, 74, it's debatable. I see different dates online. TSR is created. We're gonna call it TSR 1, okay? Or they create D&D.
And which year was this? This is
73, 74.
73, 74. Okay, so this is the first iteration of Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. So then all is pretty much quiet until 1997 when TSR is bought by Wizards. I don't think they were even called Wizards of the Coast at the time. I think they were just called Wizards. I might be wrong. Right. But and then
that's
shortly
like 23 years or something of uninterrupted TSR.
Right. So then after that, so that was 97, 99, Hasbro buys Wizards. So, now it's a much bigger corporation. And we'll find out later that they let the TSR trademark expire. So somewhere now, again, another big jump, November 2012, some guy named Jason Elliott registers the TSR name because the trademark expired. And so he picks it up, and we're going to call that TSR2. So Jason Elliott, TSR2. And he basically picks it up so that he can launch this like Gygax magazine. And the Gygax's sons, Luke and Ernie, are involved. But eventually, they also let the trademark expire again, right? Again. So I'm not sure what's happening here, but they're just not being on top of it. Okay, so in 2015, Gail, who I believe is Gygax's wife or was, I don't know at the time if they were married or not, but sued TSR 2 because of the use of the name Gygax, which I find funny because it's his sons, right? I'm not sure how that works.
Okay. And we don't know if there was any bad blood between the sons and the mom or anything like that.
Right. I mean, I'm sure if I dug deeper, but this was already like a really huge timeline. So I was like, this is good enough, but I'm sure there's details out there.
Publicity.
So then, so Gail sues because of the name Gygax, what have you.
Right.
And then they're forced to close their doors. And so then, this was not really part of this lawsuit. It's kind of part of this lawsuit, but I guess their home got bought and turned into this dungeon hobby shop museum, which I'll get into later. But that was in October 2020. Okay, sorry. There's so much here, and I'm trying not to lose anybody. Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. You can't see the visual, all of you folks, but in my notes, there is a bunch of this stuff that's now highlighted because everything I'm about to say happens in 1 month. Within a 1 month time frame, the rest of this stuff happens.
Wow.
So, you're seeing it, right? Okay, so in June 2021, TSR 3. Okay, so now this is the third iteration of TSR. They announce themselves. They just come out and say, we're a company, okay? And they claim to be the original TSR, that they're back, that they're under the leadership of Ernie, Gary's son, okay? And now involved, you're going to remember these names, Justin Lanasa and Steven Deinhardt, okay? So 3 dudes create or just basically announce, we're TSR 3. And their flagship is this product called Giant Lands.
Giant Lands, right.
Right. And all of this, they announced it without even notifying the guy. Remember Jason Elliott, TSR2? He let that trademark expire. And instead of saying, hey, dude, you let it expire, we're going to pick it up, they just did it. They just did it without saying anything. Okay. And I think also it might mention it here later, but I want to say that they did say, hey, Jason, if you want to be a part of this, you can at least, you can pay us and we'll let you be a part of it. Like, I might be getting that wrong, but I'm pretty sure I remember hearing that somewhere. Okay, so TSR 3 says we're a thing. And then they also say we're rebooting Star Frontiers, which is a game that Wizards currently owns and is currently selling on their website. Okay, they registered the trademark and everything. So TSR 3 is selling or saying that they're going to reboot Star Frontiers, which Wizards is already doing. Now, Ernie goes on a YouTube interview, and this interview goes wild because he starts raging online. He starts making little digs at new gamers, at Wizards of the Coast, and trans people, which is not going to go over well in the community, right? So then, okay, so then it comes out that, TSR2, Jason Elliott, he forgot to renew that trademark. I'm sure he's kicking himself in the butt because he was like, they just did this thing and he figured it out 2 days later. This is how they got away with it.
Cheeky fuckers.
Right. So, let's see. Oh gosh, I'm getting lost in all the things that happened. There it is. Yeah. This is at the point where he realizes his mistake and they tell him, hey, for a fee, we'll let you use it too. Like, kind of a little kick me while I'm down. Okay. So now TSR 3, the 3 dudes, they embark on this social media campaign where they're telling everyone that if you don't like Gary Gygax, then don't play D&D. They apparently called a trans person on Twitter disgusting. They started using the word woke. I don't even know how to explain it. It sounds almost like a slanderous thing, the way that they use it, but they would thank woke people because sales are up. And then they would insult Luke Gygax and a whole bunch of stuff. And anyone who tried to question them, they just blocked or insulted. So not off to a good start.
Right.
Okay. Then various companies that could have potentially been attached to the TSR name, they start distancing themselves, obviously, including Gen Con, which, that was created by Gygax, right? TSR2, so the guy who did TSR2, Jason, he basically rebrands himself as Solarian Games and is like, peace out, I'm out. And various other individuals, right? So TSR3, the 3 dudes, they respond about being banned by Gen Con. Their response was saying, well, but we created it, so you can't ban us.
Right.
It'll just be, we'll just create our own thing or something. They were so, what's the word I'm thinking? Just condescending and anyway. Okay,
arrogant?
So then, arrogant, that's the word I'm thinking of. So then TSR3 starts pushing back on Wizards of the Coast. They're accusing Wizards of mounting a coordinated assault on them. So they're trying to get everybody to bandwagon with them to ban Wizards. I'm not sure. But, and you'll find out, I think maybe it was the next day, after they go on this media campaign saying Wizards they're bullying us. The very next day, they deactivate their Twitter accounts because they received a cease and desist from Wizards. So now we're
Okay.
still, remember, I have not even finished the highlighted area. We're still in this 1 month time frame that all this
It's
is
like the
happening.
middle of it, isn't it? This
We're
is
just in
still
the
somewhere in the
middle of
middle.
it. Okay.
Right.
So then, okay, so now this is funny. After they get rid of their Twitter accounts, there's now
Right.
a new Twitter account run by a supposed new public relations officer named Michael. But
Michael.
there's no such person as Michael. So they just created their own public relations officer to handle this.
Well, that's a cheap way of doing it. I mean, you got to admit, it's kind of clever in its own way.
So it literally prompts like this. I mean, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like web warriors. I think there's a phrase for it where people, they just love to search this stuff out, like fact checked everything. So
Right.
it prompts this whole online search for who's Michael, because no one has heard of him, no one's seen him,
Right.
he doesn't exist.
Right.
Then
Stock photo
TSR.
kind of deal, I suppose.
Yes. Okay, so now at this point, I believe Steven Deinhart, so he's one of the three, right? I believe
Right.
he starts pulling away from this TSR3. And this is where it gets kind of a little dicey, because when you listen to the video from Dungeons and Discourse, she goes into from TSR3 to TSR4, but in the timeline, they go from TSR3 to TSR 3.5. So bear with me. I'm going to say TSR 4. I feel like it's a little bit cleaner. So Steven,
yes.
one of the three guys, starts kind of pulling away, and he registers a site. It's registered as Wonder Filed, but then I think very shortly he corrects it to Wonder Filled. So I think he just, like, on a whim,
Misspelled it or
he
something.
misspelled his own website that he was creating, and then was like, whoops, I need to fix this, because he was also trying to pull away. He was breaking up with them because of the politics. So he misfiled his own site and then corrected it later. So he is no longer part of this TSR3. And now they're TSR4 without him. Okay. So let's see. Oh, that's right. Okay, so the Giant Lance projects that I mentioned before. So Steven, with his little wonder-filed company, continues to feature this Giant Lance project. Okay.
I thought you said Wonder Defiled or something at first.
Wonder Defiled would be a great. Yeah, he could have spelled it that way. All right, so let's see. Okay, yes. So now TSR 4, which is Ernie and Justin Lanasa, TSR 4, they start making claims that there was an unnamed individual running their Twitter accounts, that it wasn't them, it was someone else, and we would never do anything like that. So all those previous social media posts and everything that you heard should just be invalid, like it didn't happen.
Right, it's probably Michael.
Probably, right? I mean, we still haven't heard about Michael again after this. So that is all in 1 month span, just that month of drama. Okay, then things start to slow down a little bit, okay? So TSR4 announces their own con. They call it TSR Con. And it was supposed to be held on July 4th weekend in Lake Geneva, which is the same location that Gen Con launched, right? And they basically were trying to make a dig at Gen Con and saying, like, TSR Con will always be here in Lake Geneva. But it never took place. They never did TSR Con.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. So then, let's see. I'm going to, it's part of the timeline, but not important to this here. Okay. So then this PR person, Michael, announces that the Star Frontiers game that Wizards is already doing it, but they're going to do it too. They're going to reboot it or something. Michael claims that the Star Frontiers game that they put out came out and then sold out before they could announce it. And that's why nobody can get any.
Right. Wow, that's clever.
There was even a picture that went out on the internet that was photoshopped to make it look like there's a stack of books. Like, when you have the what are they, the cap ends at Barnes and Noble or something. It's just stacks of books, like totally photoshopped. This is just
Oh,
horrible. So then,
what the hell is going on here?
it's so wild, all of this. Um, okay, so now TSR Con. We were talking about that, right? They were gonna we're gonna still have it in Lake Geneva. And they
Right.
tried to move it from the July 4th weekend to the very same weekend that GaryCon was going on. Like, they think we are big enough to pull people away from GaryCon and
Right.
you're going to come to TSR, right?
Right.
So the venues
Brilliant.
moved, even though it didn't happen in Lake Geneva, the venues moved. And then, oh, that's right, because I think this was during the height of the people wearing masks, the pandemic. So they had a graphic on their website that promised that they will not be checking vaccinations or asking people to wear face masks. Which I guess
It's a-
for some people that could have been a draw, but I think this is October 2021. So I think people were probably, I don't know. It's questionable whether or not that was probably a good thing to promote. I don't know.
right.
Okay, so then let's see. In December, so now we're October to December 2021. Oh, you know what I'm missing here? It wasn't in the notes. Okay, so they're trying to do TSR Con. They move
Yeah.
it to the same week as Gary Con, and then they tried to post on social media. Now, don't quote me. I'm trying to dissolve from memory, and my memory's horrible. But it was something like 800 people. They put it on their social media that 800 people came to join them at TSR Con, and that pretty much no one went to Gary Con is what they were trying to say. But
Wow.
it
Wow.
was
Okay.
not provable. Anyway,
What are these guys smoking? Is
I
what I want to
don't
know.
know. It's wild. Um, okay, so then, oh my gosh. Okay, so now we're getting into like the real legal things happening.
Right.
Wizards,
Right.
Wizards is suing
So at this
them.
point, does
Go ahead.
Wizards are they owned by Hasbro at this point, or are they still just Wizards?
No, Wizards was owned by Hasbro like 2 years after Wizards bought TSR.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, Hasbro has been a part of pretty much all of this anyway.
So these knuckleheads are taking on Hasbro at this point.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
Okay. That's pretty keen.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck.
Okay. So then they TSR4, excuse me, the two guys, they launch an Indiegogo campaign to stop Wizards of the Coast. Again, they're basically saying Wizards they're bullying us. We're the original people. They're just whatever. And I think see, again, it's not in this timeline, but it's in videos that I watched, that I think they ended up having to drop the Indiegogo, or they had to stop something. I can't remember, but they never said anything about like the money that they collected.
Right.
Which, by the way, they only collected like 4,000 out of 40,000 that they needed. So it was
Right.
very visible to everyone that like
It was a big
their
failure.
their cause was not being backed by a whole lot of people.
Right.
Okay, so then, oh, there it is. Yeah, eventually made 4K instead of 40K. See, I'm just jumping ahead of my own notes.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, oh, that was so TSR4 had filed a lawsuit against Wizard, doing the whole like they're bullying us, but apparently they filed it in the wrong jurisdiction, so they had to refile it. Because I guess they just didn't do it right the first time.
Oops.
Oopsie. Now, Michael, the ever elusive Michael. Okay, so
Right.
he, I'm trying. Oh, this is again. Yeah, it's more of the Star Frontiers was released but sold out thing that happened.
Right.
But people were actually searching online, like, has anybody publicly gotten one of these copies? Please show us. And crickets.
Now, I noticed that you've got some faded notes in there. Is that stuff you're leaving out, or is that stuff you're about to
It's
cover?
no, it's just stuff that I was trying to, because there's so much to this timeline. I was really trying to whittle it down to just what's
Right.
important to the lawsuit. There's some funny stuff there though. Name calling and just, yeah, if you want to go over that stuff you can. I was
I
just
can
trying
see
to.
it says here, Tim Kask, a profane message telling him to go suck Luke's Whatsy's balls, you fucking coward, and
Yeah.
accusing him of being fired from TSR for stealing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yes. So I'm going to get into Justin Lanasa in a minute. Everybody remember this name, because there's a
Right.
whole lot going on with Justin Lanasa if you don't know. Um,
Right.
but for now, so when I get into what's going on with Justin Lanasa, I think all of this is going to make some sense. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so they sued TSR4, sued Wizards. Wizards sues back, obviously, and so now they're suing each other for all this stuff. And now we're getting into all the legal mumbo jumbo.
Right.
um they have to get extensions because they're not pulling together everything that they need to pull together.
Right.
um oh, here it is, the thing. So see, again, I jump ahead of my notes. So TSR Con actually takes place while they're going through all this legal mumbo jumbo, and they claimed that they asked just about everybody, 800 people who stopped by TSR Con, and they said that 60% of them had no idea that Gary Con was going on, and that we tried to push them to go over to Gary Con and attend. Mm, I'm not sure
Mm.
if I believe that.
Mm.
Um, let's see. Oh, here we go. Okay, so now
What date are we at the moment? This is
this is March 2022.
okay. Right.
Okay. So there's some minor little dramatic things happening. They rebound some copies of AD&D first edition books, and they were selling for $650 each. Um, Part of TSR3, of their folks, was Dave Johnson. Evidence emerged that he had Nazi connections.
Yay.
Yeah. So Drive Through RPG removes all of Dave Johnson's titles from their platform. So there's just a lot of this. Oh, it's just getting so messy and nasty. And
Right.
so now we're in May 2022, and they finally have a trial date set. And then here we go. So a leaked version of the Star Frontiers new game emerges on the internet. This is the Star Frontiers that TSR3 said they were working on, right?
Right.
A leaked version comes out. And this content, which there are screenshots in Dungeons and Discourse videos, and I'm sure you can find all the screenshots. I'm not going to say
Right.
exactly what it says, but there was a bunch of racist and white supremacist stuff in this data that got leaked.
Right.
Character races with ability caps based on ethnicity, various homophobic and transphobic phobic references. And Justin Lanasa, again, that guy, he immediately threatens to sue the blogger who leaked it. Okay, saying, this isn't real, it's photoshopped, what have you, like, this is slander, all this stuff, right? He was just
Right.
getting really upset. Which, by the way, there's a screenshot of his threat, because he does it on social media, and everything is completely misspelled. Like, this guy has no credibility whatsoever.
Wow.
Okay, so then oh, that's right. There's this video that, again, I don't know if it's a leak or what have you, but there's a video of their Google Drive, which it's literally an
Right.
Excel spreadsheet that
Right.
lists their enemies, okay? And next to the name, there is a little description, like, I'm trying to, I can't, I don't have the screenshot in front of me, but it's something like, Luke, don't trust him, woke. Again, all these, like, whoever's woke, they don't like woke people.
Right.
Don't trust, woke, and blah, 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 or this person is, it was just a whole list of why they don't like
Right.
these people.
This pejorative stuff.
Yes. Okay, so now, let's see. Oh, here we go. So then, now this is funny. On the timeline, it says that Justin Lanasa sent out customer data, including addresses, credit card numbers, all this stuff. But other sources I saw said that like the data was leaked or released somehow. So I'm not sure when it says Justin Lanasa sent it. I don't know if this sounds like he did it on purpose or if this was an
Right.
accident. But people's
Right.
addresses, credit card numbers, for whatever reason, he's involved, and it got out. But he again claims that this was photoshopped, and whoever says that he did it, it's slander. They're liars. Again, let's see. So then, okay, so yeah, now this was back in September when that happened, and then now in June this year, they're filing for bankruptcy. Okay, now the thing that's really interesting, it's not here in the notes, but when they filed for bankruptcy, they have to list like what their income is or what their
Right.
profit or what have you. And just for this year, they've made $600. Like little over $600. That's
Right.
and they are going against Hasbro. And
Right.
like
Good
I'm just
luck, my
wow.
friend.
So
Right.
I mean, guys, if you want to know more about like, I'm sure I chopped this up, but just go do your research. Go check out Dungeons and Discourse. There's so much involved here. It is nutty. Now, what I wanted to get back to, I think I did. I got rid of it. I had notes here about Justin Lanasa. Okay, number one,
Right.
he calls himself Sir Justin Lanasa, but he has never been knighted. But in every reference to himself, he is Sir. Sir Justin Lanasa. He wants people to refer to him that way in emails and letters, what have you. Okay.
What's this guy look like? I'm gonna Google
Are
him.
you going to Google him?
I want to know what this guy looks
I
like. He's
should have.
like
He's probably a prick. I mean, he is a prick. Let's see what else. Oh, so he also is known for owning a string of tattoo parlors. Not that
I
there's
just
anything
found
wrong
his
with tattoo
website.
parlors, but my understanding is he had no knowledge or what's the word I'm thinking of? Experience with tabletop role playing games at all when he came into the company. Now, I could be wrong, but all my research never says anything about him having any experience. He just owns a chain of tattoo parlors. He had a failed political campaign, which failed because it came out that he forced his female employees to wrestle in grits. Which, if you don't know what grits are, it's like, I think somebody said it was like porridge. It's like oatmeal. It's like,
Right.
yeah. Um, so yeah, apparently he forced his female employees to wrestle in grits. That's why his political campaign failed.
Right.
Yeah, there's
There's some
there's
pictures here of him with armored vehicles in a warehouse. Apparently, he has worked with many weapon platforms for over 25 years, from gyro jet weapons to the common AR platforms and armored vehicles, and has invented a handheld weapon system for a Picatinny undermount rails gravity grip TM.
interesting.
Yes, there's this lovely picture of him with this blonde woman wearing a puffy sleeved shirt, standing in front of Christmas trees with a child, and they look very happy indeed. But he does look like a douchebag, I must say.
Yeah, the other thing was I think I read he was a weapons builder, creator. I don't know, something like that.
Right.
Um, Oh gosh. Yeah. Okay. So sorry guys. I was focusing on that timeline, so I wanted to check the chat real quick. Yes, Avery, this whole thing is a dumpster fire.
Right.
Con seems appropriate. Yes, that is. Oh, you said that.
Yeah, I said that.
Oh my gosh.
Shocking.
It's just it's a mess. It's a dumpster fire. But anyway, so that's where we're at. So they're filing for bankruptcy, and oh, and the court case is postponed until March 2024. So I'm not sure how much more drama we're going to get out of this, but I
Right.
mean, maybe we'll get a little bit more. We'll see.
Sounds like it. I mean, these guys don't sound like they're going to just lie down and die. But
Exactly. Like they
I
could
hate to
have
think.
so many times before, but instead they just dug their feet in and like double down.
Isn't it remarkable that this small group of people who are sort of related to the original TSR creator turn out to be essentially amongst, if not representational at least, of the very worst individuals in our community? Like they
Right.
are literally the worst of. I mean, terms like grognard come to mind, although that doesn't necessarily have to have a negative connotation, but it certainly overlaps in the Venn diagram of fuck muppets.
It is wild. I had no idea. This actually kind of opened up a can of worms for me because this is why I love Doc too, because he knows all this stuff and maybe you do too, but like it made me
Not
question,
really.
so do Luke and Ernie, they don't have a relationship at all? Like they're brothers, right? Do they hate each other?
Right,
Are they completely at
right.
opposite ends of this, or is this like a behind the scenes like we're cool, bro, but yeah, I'm going to do this business and I'm just really curious how this works. And Gail too. Like what's their dynamic?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean that's what I was curious to. The mother, like, where does
Yeah.
she stand in relation to these two boys, and is she further on one side or the other, or
Yeah.
separating herself from both of them? Or
So wild.
wow, what a can of worms! What an amazing pile of research you managed to dig up there. I'm once again blown away by your thoroughness.
It's just a
Samantha.
timeline. I just copied and pasted.
Well, yeah, fascinating though, isn't it?
Yeah,
The
it is.
Nazi connections, the ridiculous tactics, the photoshops, the leaks, the oh my god.
Yeah, and I'm sure I've missed like because there was just so much to pull in that I did type things up, and then once I saw the timeline, I was like, oh, let's just copy and paste this. This is more comprehensive, but I do think that it doesn't contain everything. So anybody who's interested in this, go check out Dungeons and Discourse. Go, I'm sure there's other YouTube channels or sources that you can get some of the other details that maybe I didn't pull in. It's fascinating. So,
Right.
all right. That is it for news. I figured that was enough, that we didn't need to pull in anything else like, TV shows and movies and stuff.
All right.
Um, but now we're going to move on to our next segment, which is Your Weekend Games. And I have nothing to report for my weekend games. I have not had anything happen this
Nothing.
very last week. So I thought we could
I'm
just.
so sorry.
No, that's honestly, Well, let me clarify. There is a moment here where I need to plan for. I'm trying to remember now. I feel like I don't know if I told you guys this.
Yeah, you're planning the end of your campaign, are you not?
I am. And so oh, that's right. Yes. Okay. Because last week I showed you guys the two pieces of terrain that I built. Um,
Right. Yes.
and
And they were fucking awesome.
so I do have something to report then. Nothing major, but I built those two pieces of terrain thinking, okay, I know the general direction they're going to head. This can happen or this can happen.
Right.
And because it's getting towards the end of the game, gosh, stop me if I've said this. I feel like I've said this to people, that they are doing, when you're at the end of a video game and you're like, oh, I still need to complete this and I'm going to complete all the things before I go to
Right.
so
Right.
they're,
Tidy it up, wrap up all the loose ends.
instead of going where I thought they were going to go, they just kind of decided, you know what? We haven't gone into
Right.
this guy's backstory. Let's go over
Yeah.
here.
That's
And
right. You did
so
mention that.
I
Yeah,
did.
it's
Okay.
elevator.
I did say this. So, now I'm at a point where I kind of have to get back into my world building head because I didn't expect them to go to this area.
Right.
And as much as I want to kind of expedite things and get them to the end, because I promised them that we would get to the end by so and so months,
Yeah.
I don't want to just gloss over this person's backstory because he hasn't been able to play as much
Right.
because he has kind of a rotating schedule. So I did
Right.
ask him and I said, what things would you as a player want to experience? Like, when we get to the end of the game, would you have gone, oh man, I wish I'd tried to find this person. I wish I'd, done this while I was here in this area. Like, what are some things that you're going to miss if you don't do it so that I can try to incorporate that? So that's where I'm now trying to figure out how I can fit that in. So I
Right.
can't say too much because I'm pretty sure he's listening. Um, However, if you guys stick around, we are going to world build and create a monsters encounter for this game, and then I will tell you guys what happens. So stick around. But that's
Cool.
it for my weekend games.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's pretty interesting, really. I mean, going into characters' backstories is always a great source of inspiration, and there's always, a ton that can come out of that. And it's always going to be relevant too, because it's, obviously it's intimately tied into a player character's, history and story. So you'll have at least one person who's excited about it.
Right.
And given that the other players theoretically have relationships with that character, then they will be probably interested too, because they get to find out more about their companion.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
Well, actually, you know what
Um,
was really
yeah.
interesting was it wasn't even so the backstory that we're going into, it wasn't even that player that said, I want to go into this. It was actually another player who said, Hey,
Right.
we haven't gone into his backstory yet. Let's go over here. So he was
Right.
interested. So you're right. I
Ah,
think at least a couple people are like, Well, what's happening over there?
yeah.
Let's go check that out.
Well, I mean, if that's what they want, give the people what they want. Give them,
Exactly.
give them games and give them bread, I say.
Mm-hmm.
Haha. Yeah. Well, I've had a fairly quietish week, really. I haven't been feeling that great this week. I've been a bit sort of drained and
Oh,
a number of migraines and things. So it hasn't been a great week, but have had some fun nonetheless. We did part two of the Festival of Fame, run
that's the
by
one you
our.
play in, right?
Yeah, that's well. It's in the time slot where normally I DM and I stream the Vein Gate Chronicles, which for us is Friday nights at 7 p.m. plus 12 UTC
Mm-hmm.
on Roll Stream at Twitch. Just saying. But for the last 2 weeks, Caitlin Flower, who's one of our players and also a fabulous actress, she has been DMing for us, and so we've been doing this thing that she's called the Festival of Fame, which is kind of about what's essentially happened is our player characters have been we found this festival in the middle of nowhere, sort of in the forest at first, and got involved with this festival. And it's turned out that it's being run by a bunch of Fae who are using the festival as a way to draw us into the Feywild, so that we could then compete as tributes against other groups in different ways. And the encounter or basically the scenario that we did on session 2, which was last Friday night, Thursday day, I think, for most of you guys in America, um,
Mm.
we turned up in this sort of water arena, with starting off on the sort of floating dirt platform, and then there were these pillars, and the pillars had different statues on them, and then there were these serpents in the water, and so we got into this sort of ongoing combat that lasted through most of the session with various traps and things, and a lot of climbing up pillars and stuff. And one of our players
Cool.
unfortunately couldn't be there because he's getting eye surgery at the moment, so we kind of Caitlin found a way of pulling him out of the story, and his character is my character's mentor. I play this first level bard, fifth level, sixth level sorcerer, third level bard. Yeah, I'm a halfling called Tom Hardley. Um,
That's right. I love that name.
he's pretty funny. He's really fun to play, but he does talk too much. And anyway, yeah, my character is very underpowered. Like he's all of the spells that I have chosen for him are like mostly utility type spells and stuff, good for social situations, good for stealing stuff or espionage or thievery, that type of stuff. But and he doesn't really have the nature to do a lot of that stuff anyway, but he's good at it. So he will do it when he has to, but he doesn't usually sort of run headlong into those sorts of situations. And he really, really, really didn't want to fight. Like I think there's the sort of my last line in the first session was something to the effect of, I just want to eat pies and go home.
Traumatized.
He was very traumatized. So yeah, we ended up in this big fight, and at the end of it, we got sucked down into the water, under the water, and we had to fight what I assume was some sort of aboleth homebrew
Ooh.
creation thing, which actually I killed in the end. It was when I say I killed it, I
Your
mean
character.
I did the least amount of damage to it, but I got the killing blow, which involved me pulling my loot out of my bag of holding underwater and then casting catapult on it and flinging it into the eye of the creature, where it sort of busted open and smashed into splinters, and all the strings broke in this discordant melody of aboleth death.
That's
And it
awesome.
actually worked. So that was where we sort of left it. Oh no, then we appeared in a forest, and we know there's wolves coming. So that was that game.
Oh,
My
before you
son,
move on, I'm just
yeah,
gonna say I can see my husband in the chat laughing, ha ha ha, because he knows that's his character, and he's the reason why we had to not use my 2 terrain pieces that I slaved over. Anyway, all right,
oh no,
okay.
Sean, is it? Now I know who you are, Sean.
Yep,
I'll
now
be
we
keeping an
know.
eye out for you. Yeah, I'm gonna add you as a friend right now. Ha! Unless
Anyway,
you say no, which you of course are
that's
welcome
too
to.
funny.
Yeah, so then what do? We had Sunfall is my Wednesday face-to-face campaign. Who Avery is in that campaign. And one of the characters, the barbarian, recently stole a artifact, an axe called Bale, which it's an intelligent ancestral weapon which he's connected to. When he first saw it in this collection, shall we say, it spoke to him, and he had to go back and steal it. Having stolen it,
Wait, when you say it spoke to him, do you mean like it actually like said words, or
yeah,
you're saying
in-
like
in-
he wanted?
yeah, it whispers into his mind.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool. I mean, when you kill something and you roll like a 19 or a 20, they have to make a saving throw to be afraid of you.
Yeah.
Not kill,
Wow.
but if you hit with a 19 or a 20, they have to make saving throws or fear, and it's got some other powers.
That's awesome.
And it grows as you level up too, because we're using the ancestral weapons PDF from DM's Guild, created by some very clever person who sat down and made that. It's a very cool system. Anyway, yeah, so he had to go back and apologize to the lady whose collection this was, and he really didn't want to. But he decided to do it in the end. So that was cool. And now they're planning the kidnapping of who are they kidnapping? A Barakyle envoy wizard, which is going to be troublesome because they have this particular fellow, Martinus, has a small entourage of 4 apprentices with him at all times. And so they're figuring out how they're going to basically try and get him into a carriage and ride him off and get him on a boat and convince them that he's there to do something that he's not. And it sounds like a good plan. We'll see how well they can execute it. So I'm looking forward to that. Burning Path has a new player, Caleb, and he's doing great. He's a half elf who was brought up in the Sawnel Farms. I have this bit of lore in my world where elves, or even half elves, that want to dissociate themselves from their family lineages, because I've got a lot of lore about family lines and lineages, and most of my player characters have some kind of family connection somewhere in the world, and I have a lot of sort of family tree stuff that interconnects with the factions and so on, and motivations.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, so this guy, there's this order called the Black Guard who work for this sort of, let's just say he's the usurper king of the elves. And the Black Guard are kind of like the SS. They turn up at your house and you shit your pants. So the Black Guard tend to be the greatest creators of half elf offspring,
Ooh.
because they're basically nasty fuckers and they get around. And so they've created this thing called the Sawnel Farms, which where they take these half elves and raise them there as spies and rogues and such out in the middle of nowhere. And they don't know what their lineages or anything. So any elf that wants to distance themselves from their family line, they choose the name Sawnel. It's like Smith, or you know how directors that want to distance themselves from movies that they've created call
Yeah.
themselves Adam
Yeah.
Smith, kind
Mhm.
of like that. So anyone that wants to sort of not be associated with their family lineage calls themselves such and such Sawnel, um, or some variation of that. So yeah, this new player is playing a half elf from the Sawnel Farms, and that's turning out to be very interesting.
That's cool.
My vampire game on Sunday nights. Oh, we're getting influxed. Influx, that's a new word. I just made that up. We have an influx of new players there. I'm actually at capacity now, 6 players.
That's awesome.
So that's very cool. But it is proving challenging getting everyone to sort of work together. I mean, I sort of outlined it from the beginning, and we sat down with the group at different times now, and we've discussed who's got connections to who and what their relationships are and how they influence each other. Why would they want to work together? Blah blah blah. And we've created a pretty elaborate kind of background there now, which seems to be working really nicely. And I had to work quite hard. My whole sort of message on this is that I want the players, and I say this a lot, I want the characters to have their bonds to be stronger than their conflicts. But that way, I mean, they should have conflicts because conflict is drama, right? But
Right.
as long as their bonds are stronger than their conflicts, then the group will cohese and work together. We don't want the old situation where we've got players trying to steal shit off each other or destroy each other, or PvP type situations. Trying to avoid that sort of thing at all costs. Whilst letting people play their characters fully. So having metagamed that stuff, I think we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Bringing it
seems to,
back.
yeah, it seems to be working a lot better. And I guess last but not least, I've just been booked for a seminar where I shall be talking about world building, funnily enough, at a library in front of some budding authors, apparently. So
Nice.
that's going to be interesting. So yeah, I done anything else this week? I can't really think of anything really exciting besides that. Ran a game at a restaurant. Yeah.
I wish, I mean, it just sounds like your week was so much busier than mine because I didn't really have much to report. If only I could just report
Well,
on like homesteading stuff because then I
right.
I had to bathe a chicken and it was really gross, but you guys don't want to hear
Wow.
about that. So
Well, you can always take that stuff and sort of, integrate that into your stories, use it as inspiration for the mundane moments
oh
that
yeah.
happen in stories, especially in D&D.
Yes.
So yeah,
And I also
that's
want to get back to Upright Man because he said in the chat he often considers playing a character like Kane from Kung Fu series,
right.
soft-spoken, non-violent, and refuses to take a life, but most D&D games won't allow it. I would like to challenge you, Upright
Mm,
Man, and say it's not the game so much as your table because I could imagine playing a character like that at the table that I'm at, and it would
mm,
be okay as
mm.
long as I play into the fun of it, right? Like as long as my group knows, hey, I'm probably not killing anybody. I'm probably not going to hurt anybody. But guess what? Like I'll heal you guys or I'll support you or maybe I'll look like I think we talked about this one of the characters like fumbles and falls and like oops my dagger just fell into your chest. Oh no, like you could
Right,
still
right,
do that without
right.
being a
And you can,
violent type.
I mean, my bard sorcerer is all about sort of restraining people, and that type of stuff as well. Like he'll do anything to not commit violence, but he's, as a sorcerer, he's got spells that work, like charm person and hold person and stuff like that, that
Right.
also kind of relate to that. But he really doesn't want to kill anyone. But you can also remember you can grapple people in D&D. You can grapple them and restrain them and all of that business as well. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's totally possible. You just have to build your character the right way and take the right feats, I guess. And more to the point, at the end of the day, the DM makes a lot of difference, I think, letting you get away with that stuff.
Right.
Sometimes certain DMs are going to really push the rules in one direction or another.
Yeah.
But you totally get away with it in one of my games if you want it upright, man. I'm just saying. Just saying. I'm enjoying my games.
And then, real quick, before we move on to the next topic or the next segment, I just want to let everybody know, remind everyone that if you are enjoying what you're hearing and if you like our show, please share
Yeah.
with your friends, share with your groups, like and subscribe, all that stuff. Just help us help you.
Yeah. Please.
That's it.
Thank you. And stuff. Right. Well, we're doing the thing today. We
Do
got
you
time
want to
for
do?
Russ's
Yeah, you want to do
unsolicited
the
opinion.
unsolicited opinion? Let's do it.
All right.
Honestly,
So
yeah. We have time. Let's do it.
All right, this is going to be fairly short anyway. I don't have huge amounts to say on this, and a lot of it has been said in one way or another before. But I just, I wanted to cover this again, and I want to talk about player character death. And I'm sure that most of us have had a character die at some point or another, and it typically it sucks, especially when it's accidental or it's in some sort of meat grinder situation where you're in a game where the DM is running something like, for example, the Death House in Curse of Strahd, where you just go in there with one character and they die, and then the next week you come back with a new character and they die, and then the third week you come back with a new character, but you get to a new room and then they die. That kind of meat grinder game. If you're in the right mood for that, if you're in that sort of headspace and that's what you want and that's what you're having fun with, that's great. But player character death, even in that case, it's never really the most exciting outcome that you were looking forward to. It's sort of a bit disappointing. You're going to make a new character, what have you.
Right.
So,
and also, just to tie it into our topic tonight, I mean, player character death can happen if you don't plan your encounter, your monster, you don't scale your monster appropriately or what have you. So we'll get into that topic later, but yeah.
Yeah. So I sort of want to talk a little bit about how to, or the consequences of that, in terms of avoiding these sorts of accidental deaths where people's characters end up dying and it's sort of meaningless. Then that's the thing. I think if you want the players to have fun, you want them to feel like they have agency, but at the same time, you have to have the sense of having high stakes. So we talked about metagaming a lot last week, and this kind of ties back into that. And to me, it's all about the communication between the player and the DM, the DM and the players overall. In so much as you need to, in my opinion, you need to talk about whether or not they felt that this type of death is appropriate, or you want to avoid killing them by choosing the right DC and making sure that or challenge rating, really, I guess. You do get the occasional killer DM who's just out there to kill characters, and I don't think you want to be that guy.
Right.
It's, to me, if you've got a DM that's just killing characters, it says to me that they don't have any planning, because they don't know where the game's going. They haven't put any effort into actually planning the game beyond the point where they're killing off your characters. But at the same time, you want those stakes. So having the occasional deadly encounter, at least on my table, is sort of how I work it. But there are alternatives to killing PCs, as far as keeping the stakes high and making it exciting. Like, instead of perhaps killing a player character to just sort of, you want to show the players something, you want to make sure they understand the consequences of their actions, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to necessarily kill them to do that. You can kill off their favorite NPC. That you can make them cry. And they will cry a lot harder over that.
You can make it hurt without.
You can make it hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I've seen players cry over this stuff. My ex girlfriend from years ago didn't talk to me for 2 weeks after I killed off an NPC. I mean, literally didn't talk to me for 2 weeks because she was so upset about it.
Yeah.
And it was her character liked this NPC. There was like a father figure to her, and I guess there were other issues in there somewhere. But anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to touch on this. Sometimes, I mean, I had an interesting situation recently where I have a player who had a character that did die in a kind of random and unexpected way, which I didn't feel great about. And afterwards, we looked at it and thought, well, there was a way in which he could have survived that, but we didn't think of the mechanic at the time.
Right.
And more recently, he had a character that I think he sort of just decided he didn't really like playing that much and wanted to kill off. And I think the important thing here is, if you do have a character like that you want to kill off, what you should definitely do is tell the dungeon master. Don't start playing your character in a hazardous way in order to get yourself killed, because it can really upset the whole game and knock everything out of balance.
Right.
I was a little bit upset about this particular situation, and it made my life very difficult. And it's that being said, I don't blame the player for this. I think that it was just a sort of casual mistake, but it really would have helped me a lot if we could have sat down and talked about, I want my character to die. How do we make it dramatic? We won't tell anyone this is going to happen, but we're going to, I want a scene somewhere where I can kill off this character and it can be meaningful and we can say goodbye to them so I can bring in a new character later or something like that.
Right.
Um,
That way it doesn't leave everyone at the table with like a bad taste in their mouth, you know?
yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. That's kind of the point there. And I think that you want your character, if they mean anything to you, or if they have meant anything to you, then you want them to go out in sort of some legendary way that leaves an impression and a mark, and not sort of just be another stain on the wall of the dungeon. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
all I
have.
really wanted to know. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of checking your notes, and that's the thing is, especially when it comes to creating, if you're going to homebrew or scale monsters, because I was, trying
Mm.
to connect this with the topic we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, right.
Um, as a DM, when you are scaling and homebrewing your monsters, there's a very real chance that you scale things inappropriately or don't take something into account, and then next thing you
Yeah,
know, you have killed one of your player characters. Um,
yeah, yeah.
and I think when we get to the topic, I'll cover some of the ways that I handle when I've not scaled something properly. And yeah,
Right.
we'll talk
I
about
look
that during
forward
the
to that.
topic. Yeah.
Well, is it time for our break?
Yeah, I think it's a good time for a break. Hey, everybody, if you've stuck around this long, please stick around just a little bit longer. We are about to
Yeah.
get into our topic. After the break, we're going to talk about scaling and homebrewing monsters, okay? And or encounters, because it doesn't just have to be monsters, or it could be a combination of all of those. So stick around. During the break, we are going to feature some music by the Imaginary Suitcase. I just listened to it earlier today. It kind of transports me to like, I don't know, it transports me to like an ancient place. I keep thinking like, I don't know, I'm in the I'm gonna get it wrong. What I'm just picturing Green Hills of Ireland. What is that like
Right.
called the Moors, or is that, where is that?
More. Yeah. Why
I don't
not?
know.
Yeah. No,
Why not?
nobody knows.
But anyway, it
Nobody
kind of
really knows.
transports me a bit. And maybe that's not their intention, but I really loved the music. And then there's also
Okay.
an art video by Nat 20, which I think is just one of those, those fascinating, like satisfying videos where you're just watching something and it's so satisfying to watch. It's very peaceful. You're going to love
Right.
that. And then we have some deception checks from our own Dungeon Studios voice actors. So
Wow.
we're going to see you in about 13 minutes, and then we will get
Right.
into our topic. See you then,
Let's line it up.
everybody.
Hi, this is Sean from
Hello, can you hear me okay? Hello?
Yeah. Who am I speaking to?
Yes, hello. This is Lord Aldor, and I'm looking for a personal trainer.
Great.
Good.
Are you in Ventura, Camarillo, or Moore Park?
Moore Park, but we do have a very extreme request, and I want to get that out of the way right off the bat.
Okay.
Are you familiar with paintballing?
Paintball?
Yes.
Absolutely.
You see, I am an avid hunter, and so I have tracked and bagged many, many rare game. But the one prey I have yet to bag is the most elusive of all, the human hunt. So what I'm looking for is somebody who is in excellent physical shape. So what can you bench?
For me, I don't know if I'm the right person for you. I have a lot of people at the gym though that you can hunt, I'm sure.
Well, how fast is your quarter mile? We need a sprinter. It also has longevity. Now, the paintballs themselves...
Longevity, a big...
I just wanted to go into the paintballs themselves. They're going to be half filled with flat latex and half curare, which is a nerve toxin which will follow you just long enough for me to urinate on your feet, therefore marking my territory.
Sounds fair enough.
You should wear boots, very high boots. You will be stripped down to a loincloth and released into the wild with nothing but a compass and some fruit roll-ups, which I highly recommend that you eat sparingly, because that's all you're going to get.
How many fruit roll-ups?
Probably, I think a good half pound.
All right.
So
I think I can manage.
That should give you the energy enough, for you. We'll give you a 30-minute head start. It's going to be on an island. I own the island. It's going to be it's going to be televised. So you will have to sign an NDA. But, we'll go over all of that in the contract. Where can I send that to?
Sure. Why don't you bring it in person?
Perfect. Are you there now?
Well, I could meet you at the Ventura location here in an hour. And can I get your name?
Yes,
again?
it's Lord Aldor.
Aldor. Perfect.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Right on.
She sat down below a thorn, fine flowers in a valley, and there she has her sweet baby born, and the green leaves they grow ruddy. Smile is so sweet, my bonny babe, fine flowers in a valley, oh your smile is so sweet, you smile me dead. And green leaves they grow rally. She's digging out a weeping knife, fine flowers in a valley, and she twined a sweet babe of its life. And green leaves they grow rally. She's woke at a grave by the light of a moon, fine flowers in a valley, and there she is buried, a sweet baby, and green leaves they grow rally. As she was going to the church, fine flowers in a valley, those found her sweet babe in the bush, and green leaves they grow rally. Oh sweet babe, you were mine, fine flowers in a valley, I would gladly understand so fine, and green leaves they grow rally. Oh, to they grow rowdy.
Yes, hello. I'm Evelyn Dryerwood, and my sisters and I have chosen your grounds. And we would love to check on some permits and regulations to see if we can perform our ritual on your grounds. Hello?
So what do you need to do?
Oh, there's only about 7 of us. We'll be in formation, you know, like holding hands and naked for several hours, and we'll be doing spells. Don't worry, we'll be gathering some herbs from the property and trapping some small animals.
Sure.
Oh, excellent. Say, now, are you available for the ritual?
Oh, you're damn right I am.
Oh, this is amazing. I love your positive energy. We won't need to do cleansing on you. Or maybe we will. But we will need you to take off your shirt and bathe in pig's blood. Are you willing to do that?
By cleansing, do you mean a sponge bath?
Oh, we can definitely do that. Oh, we can definitely do that. Oh, you are being so open. Yes, I love your energy. Gods in the sky in the blink of an eye. Take his shirt off or he will die. But don't worry, we will bring you back to life. Don't be silly.
Sounds great.
Oh my goodness. You are really into this ritual, aren't you?
But yeah, of course.
And the sponge baths. Oh, we will all be taking sponge baths together.
Sounds even better.
Don't worry, you will be surrounded by 7 beautiful women.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We will be in touch.
All right. I have a feeling this is one of my friends, and I love you for these phone calls.
Thank you, and have an excellent day.
All right. You too.
Keep my rules to myself. Fudge a couple numbers so the body don't run out of health. Or raise the perfect if you can't watch him bleed. It's a lot of power to wield. Ooh, gotta balance these conflicts. How the players gonna handle taking licks now? Not to end their fun till the game is done. Ooh, it's a pleasure to inflict. Get up big and watch the players start to trip.
Are we back? Why can I not hear anything?
That's me. I forgot to unmute myself. So the internet just watched me just talking at them mutely. We're
Right.
a very smooth run show,
We are. That's right.
but
Yeah.
entertaining. Okay. Perfect.
Practice makes perfect.
Exactly. All right, so here we go. Guys, if you have stuck around, we're about to talk about our topic, which is scaling and homebrewing monsters. I'm excited about this topic because I am very bad about looking at the stats, the stat block, when I'm running an encounter. It's just, I prioritize keeping everything moving, keeping everyone engaged, eye contact, moving everything around. Like, just taking a minute
Yeah.
to even look down at a stat block is just really hard for me. So I
Mm.
homebrew a lot of my monsters, or I'll do some
Make
of the
them
things
up
that I'm
on the
about to
fly.
say. You what?
You can make them up on the fly.
Exactly.
Don't tell anyone.
It's honestly easier than you might think. I see a lot of questions sometimes from people in forums where and again, I mean, if you're new to the game, I totally understand that you feel the need to stick to the rules as written because you're just getting your feet under you. But I'm telling you, even if you're new to DMing, you can do this easily and your players will never know. All right, so here we go.
Probably like it too.
They'll probably like it too. Okay, so let's talk about scaling first. All right, what does it mean to scale a monster? How
Well,
would you describe it?
I wanted to ask, why would you scale a monster? Is that an important question, or do we have
No,
that
we can.
come back to?
Yeah, let's talk about why scale a monster.
Why scale a monster? Well, why would you scale a monster?
So I would scale a monster because for example, we're going to talk about this later, but my players are in an area that's like mountainous, rocky terrain, and I want to grab a monster or something like it that would fit in that terrain. So I usually go to, D&D Beyond or what have you, the monster manual,
Right.
try to find the appropriate monster, but maybe that monster that I like isn't it's not the right CR or the challenge rating or what have you
Right.
for my
Yeah.
party. So that's when I would
Right.
scale it.
Yeah, I mean, I have similar kind of feelings to that. And I mean, for me, if you look at the monster manual, you go through it, and there's all these monsters, and they're all different challenge ratings, and that's great. And this gives you a lot of choices. But usually, I mean, for me at least, my campaigns have a kind of aesthetic or a theme or a mood or a tone.
Right.
And throwing in random shit from the outer plains or
Yeah.
from wherever
Like
doesn't
imagine
really
being
seem
in
very
Vampire
appropriate.
and all of a sudden you come across a pink fluffy bunny of doom. Like that's not really it's gonna break immersion, right?
Exactly. And I mean, I think I said something about this last week. I have a lot of orcs in my campaign, for example. There's a whole thing going on with orcs, but there's only so many orcs in the monster manual. So at some point you're like, well, I need some more orcs. I need to change this up. I need different types of them and different levels of them. And as the characters sort of scale up, there's no reason why an orc can't, get to level 10 or what have you. You can have a more powerful group of orcs or what have you. So when you want to have consistent antagonists in your story or factions that are going to be the ongoing antagonist through to the end or something, or at least through a major story arc, you don't want to get to the point where the players are just wiping the floor with them constantly because that's too easy. So
Right.
that seems to be the general thing there. So for me, it's mood and tone, and it sounds to me like that's a similar thing for you.
It is because I hate to break immersion, whether it's me being the DM and taking a minute to look at things, or just coming across the pink fluffy bunny when like
Right.
what? Where are we? Like that doesn't make any
Right.
sense.
I think there needs to be more campaign themed creatures, monsters with the range of challenge ratings. So you can have a campaign that's set in the Arctic, and you don't have weird fire shit coming into it,
Right.
or whatever.
And I sometimes because I just want to make sure it's clear to anybody who is listening to us, like when I think when most people talk about scaling monsters, they talk about like scaling them up, but you can also scale them down, right? Like, for example, for me anyway, as a player, beginning
Yeah.
levels can like level 1, level 2, level 3 can kind of be sometimes a little boring. And
Yeah.
so I like to treat my players with something that feels like an epic encounter, like they're coming across a big monster, but I will scale it down and also have it make sense. Like it's an injured big monster, or for
Right.
whatever
Or a baby
reason,
one.
yeah, or it's a baby big monster. So you can take big monsters or high CR monsters and scale them down as well. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just fun.
Yeah,
All
well,
right.
they've just woken up from a long slumber
Yeah.
after 1,000 years, and they're still a bit groggy and not so good on their feet yet.
That's another great reason. Yeah. So you can come up with any reason that would make sense for why this huge monster
Yeah.
is just not as powerful.
The Lich has just arisen, and they're still getting their powers back. It's going to take 3 days. Now you've got a time lock. Do the thing.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, I'm sorry.
No,
Please
that's
continue.
that's fine. Yeah, so let's talk about ways to scale a monster. And there's so many ways to scale a monster. And this is where, for those of you that are new, just hang in there, because I know there's the question of, but how do I know how much to scale the monster? How much do I tone it down? How much do I tone it up? I will get to that. We will get to
Right.
that. But for now,
Well, I'll be
let's talk
listening
about.
intently because I don't know.
Yo, really? Okay, I'm gonna tell you my trick. So ways to scale a monster. All right. So this is what I would have you visualize, new person or anyone who's listening. Right? Imagine the monster's stat block. I mean, you can see them in the monster manual, online, what have you. But it's got just a bunch of information. It's got their HP. It's got their how hard they hit, their damage, their attacks.
Armor class.
Yeah, all the things, right? Every little thing on that stat block can be tweaked. Okay, so let's talk about it. So if you want to if you want to make a higher CR monster or lower CR monster, the easiest way I think to scale it would be go find. You know what? Sorry, I feel like we need to backtrack real quick. I missed something because I want to talk about challenge rating. Just for a second. Hate before we get into scaling, because CR is a big thing, right? This is how new players or new DMs determine this is the monster I'm going to throw at you, because you guys are all level 4, so therefore this level 4 monster should be a good challenge for you, right?
And it is based on a group of 4 players, so it should be 4 level 4 characters versus 1 CR4 creature.
Exactly, right?
If there's 6 of you, you have to think about that.
Yeah, and they don't really give you a good scale in the I mean, yeah, I don't think I've seen it in the DM's guide. Like, yeah, if you have 6 players, then you choose this. They don't tell you that. They just leave it up to your good intellect to decide.
Yes.
But let's say, okay, 4 players, level 4, you choose a level 4 monster. Okay, now I think we talked about this last week, but the game the game doesn't know whether or not you've given your players high powered magical items. They don't know whether or not you've got all clerics. Like, they just don't know. So the CR is a suggestion. It's a guideline. And
it's a very loose guideline.
It's a loose guideline, and it can be helpful. But this is where now that we've talked about challenge rating, now we can talk about scaling and the things that I do to combat things like throwing a monster at your players and your players just like bash it in 2 hits and boom, done. And boy, that was a lot of fun. The book said it was going to be fun. It said CR should be fine, or the opposite happens and, oh no, you've got your player character death and that wasn't the intention. It was just a level 4 monster. And that can happen when you have your low level characters. Oh, you got to be so careful with them. They're so squishy. So
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so now, sorry, had to backtrack. Now we're talking about ways to scale your monster, right? So number 1, easiest way, reskin. So let's say we've got our 4 characters. They're out in the forest. We choose, I don't know, I can't even think off the top of my head what's a good CR monster. An ogre, okay. Now, you want them to fight an ogre, but maybe the CR seems like it could be a little high for them, or maybe you know that they don't have a lot of magic items, they don't have any healing potions, they don't have a healer, so you want to dumb it down a little bit. Easily enough, you could just, reduce the HP, reduce the damage that this thing does. You can also go check out another monster in the
Right.
monster manual that has a lower CR, and then kind of
Right.
like match up those. That's the HP. That's the
So
AC. Go ahead.
we've got. I'm just looking at the ogre stat block. Right.
Uh huh.
It's a CR2 creature. So theoretically, 4th level characters could fight 2 of these things
Oh,
at once.
there you go.
Right.
Yeah.
In theory.
In
Or
theory.
one group of 2nd level characters, 4 2nd level characters could fight one of these things, and it would be a reasonable challenge rating. It would be medium, not hard or deadly, and not easy, but medium, right?
Right.
Um, yeah. So that's just a sort of benchmark, so that you can think about that,
Okay.
where the ogre is sort of a sort of, call that the standard kind of, I don't know, gives us an idea, at least something to latch onto.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's say, okay, so we've got 4 level 4 characters, and then we throw 2 ogres. Okay.
Right.
Now, what I've heard
Complicates things.
is the old adage is just add more HP. If it looks like they're just handling it and they're not taking any damage, and they're just whipping these ogres asses, then just
Right.
bump up their HP until it feels right that like they're posing a
Right.
challenge, which it can be okay. That's okay to
Yeah,
do
it can be
sometimes.
problematic too. I mean, you've got a range of hit points normally. I mean, D&D Beyond tells me that they have 7d10 plus 21 hit points, right? So you
Mhm.
could roll those 7d10 and add 21, or you could take the average, which is 59,
Mhm.
or you could just choose to give them the maximum number of hit points that they can have.
Mhm.
You know, the other thing to keep in mind is once you add 2 ogres, you've got twice as many attacks. It changes the action economy significantly, and it's actually harder than a challenge level 4 creature.
Right. Because you're basically getting the players are getting 4 turns essentially against your 1 turn.
If you've got one creature, yeah. And the minute you
Yeah.
start adding them, I mean, that's the other way to make encounters harder, is just add more monsters or what have you.
Right, right.
Anyway,
So if you're going to scale these up, like I said, people can add HP. You can just kind of, or sometimes I've heard, DMs do it in the middle of the encounter, right? Oh, this isn't going the way I wanted. Let's just say that they're not dead yet for like another 2 rounds or something. Like they'll just kind of add it on the fly. You can buff up their AC. Why don't you put, I mean, if these are ogres, I mean, I don't know, could they be armored? And then maybe you have to ask yourself, why would they be armored? Or maybe there's some
right,
natural armor, like they're wearing hides or something.
yeah.
But something to bump up their AC.
Right. I mean, ogres have an 11 armor class, which is kind of pathetic. And that says
Right.
hide armor. So you could totally say these are mercenary ogres that have been armed by the Vogue Manchu mercenary company, and they've been given plate mail. So they're fucking hard to hit. Now their AC is 16 or 18 or 19 or something.
Exactly. You can beef up their damage, maybe
Right.
give them, describe their weapon as having some kind of like, magical aura, and give an extra, like, I don't know, 1d6 fire damage with their attacks,
Right.
something to that effect. You can also make sure you switch up, think about melee and ranged, right? Because if you have, let's say, a party that's all melee fighters, then maybe give that monster a little bit of a ranged attack so that they can keep some distance, and that'll give them, your party a little bit more difficulty. Or reach weapons.
Right.
Yeah, so we deal a lot with reach in the game that I play in, because I'm a chain fighter, so I have a 10-foot reach. So we
Right.
end up facing a lot of monsters that have reach as well. My DM's like, well, if you can do it, I can do it too. So,
Absolutely. And you can name them as well. You can have a named creature. Like you take a stat block from a creature that already exists, and you say, well, this one, his name is, or her name is blah.
mhm.
And then you fuck with the stat block because this is an individual, specific individual. As Upright Man says, um, was it Upright Man that said this actually? No.
Are you checking the chat?
Yeah,
Yeah.
about thinking of monsters as races. They should
Right.
exist as different levels of experience, same as PC races. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can take an ogre and then say, well, this guy's a 10th level fighter ogre, and then try and build something that resembles that somehow.
Mm-hmm. And then if you're going to beef them up, you can also give them some extra abilities. And I put in here, including legendary. Now, I wouldn't throw
Yeah.
legendary probably at level 4 players. I mean,
But
there's
bonus actions,
bonus actions. Again, you're talking about action economy.
yeah, actions,
You know,
reactions,
abilities
bonus
they can,
actions.
maybe they get, maybe, like you said, instead of it would be kind of weird having a rogue ogre, but some, uh
Why
something like a
not?
sneak
Justify that.
attack, or whatever abilities that player characters have, consider
Yeah.
giving that to
Feats.
your monster. Yeah, feats, spells. Now with spells, I find interesting area of attack. Really think about, again, your party that you're up against, whether they're melee or distance fighters, and consider giving your monster area of effect spells. So you get a huge, you can maybe hit 3 of them at once. You can also think about using spells if you have a party that you're going against where maybe they have some low, I don't know, charisma, wisdom, intelligence. You can throw some spells in there to like charm them, fear
Charms,
them,
yeah.
not fear them, but make them fear
Yeah.
you. So you can really jumble it up. Think about the
You may
party
have
that you're
elves
throwing
in the
up
group
against.
that are resistant to that type of thing. You might want to split the group a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Resistances, you can give your monster some resistances. If you know that you're going to be going up against a party of, they're all fire casters, then maybe come up with a monster and a reason. Again, try to make it make sense in your world, but a reason why they would be coming up against a monster that's probably resistant to fire. Make it a little bit more difficult for them. Yeah, oh, you mentioned feats. Yeah, give them some feats,
Right.
maybe they can, if you're adding spells to your monster, maybe give them, what's the feat that they can like have advantage on their concentration check or something,
Right,
you
like
know,
Warcaster or something like that.
warcast or something like that, so it
Yeah.
makes it difficult.
You don't have to use it exactly as it's written either. You can make it your own. It's this particular character that's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And then,
It's
oh, go ahead.
yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like I'm looking at the goblin stat block now because there's something interesting about the goblins, which I think is kind of cool. They have a thing in their stat block called nimble escape.
Mm-hmm.
The goblin can take the disengage or hide action as a bonus action on each of its turns. Now, that's the sort of thing that makes them more interesting. If you don't use that
Mm-hmm.
element and you don't know how to use that element, you're missing something. The goblins work in groups. So you've got creatures that have things like pack tactics, which I have to look up the exact wording of pack tactics now, but these are the sorts of things that make groups of creatures work really well. And if
Mm-hmm.
you take some of the feats like Shield Master and so on, that player characters can take, and you can give them to creatures. I recently homebrewed some guards, the wyvern-clad guards, in one of my cities in my campaign, and they're significantly more dangerous when there's 4 of them, not because there's 4 times as many, but because they can do things like help each other
Mm-hmm.
gain an advantage on attacks and give disadvantage to their enemies because they work together as a group, the way
Right.
that players do. I made a paladin type of character, an NPC paladin, who has, rather than I hate having to look up spells in the middle of combat. It's a
Oh,
pain in
I
the
do
ass,
too. Yeah.
right? So I added
As a
in
DM.
as a DM, as a player, it's fine, but as a DM, it's just a pain in the ass. And D&D Beyond's great because they just pop up when you mouse over them, which makes it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
But to make it even easier than that, for example, I wanted this character to be able to use Smite. So I just took what I thought was a good amount of extra damage for their Smite attack and added it as a legendary action. They can choose to Smite once every few rounds. And that allows them to do more damage and have a little bit more oomph, as it were. It
Yes.
makes them feel like a paladin.
I'm smiling because so I do the same thing. I was gonna touch on it later, but that's totally okay.
Sorry.
Because no, don't, no, 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 shh, it's fine. It's fine. I love it. So I have this little table that I found on the internet. It just says damage severity by level, and
Right.
it's just a very small grid of like, okay, if you're damaging a character that's first to fourth level, then you can do 1d10 damage, 2d10 damage, or 4d10 damage, depending on, whether you want to give them a setback, you want it to be dangerous, or you want it to be deadly. Okay, that's first
Right.
to fourth, and then fifth to 10th, they bump it up, 11th to 16th level, 17th level to 20th level. So it's
Right.
basically just a table of D10s and how many D10s I can roll as a DM to dole
Right.
some damage. So it gives me, again, it's those guidelines
It's a
of,
guideline. It's,
so I don't have to look up how much
right.
damage this spell is going to do or this or that. If I can just think in my head, they're fighting this mage and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna describe a spell and then I'm just gonna roll the damage that's appropriate, and then I don't have to look anything up
Right.
except for this tiny little table that's on my DM screen.
Sure. And it gets more intuitive as you go as well, doesn't it?
Right, exactly. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Now, the other thing I like to do is, you mentioned like, instead of one ogre, you have two ogres.
Right.
But I also like to give them, if you're going to do multiple monsters, I either do monsters that have different CRs, like,
Yeah.
if they're dealing with one big ogre, but then you
Right.
also have, there's goblins that come in, and
Right.
so
5
different
goblins and
CR
an ogre.
levels, and they're just annoyances, but it still adds a level of complexity because now there's more
Right.
happening on the battle map.
Right.
This is what I say. I like to call them two hitters, because
Right.
if I do this, if they're fighting a big enemy, and I throw in just a bunch of little enemies just to kind of like add some complexity, I literally will sometimes just go have a little piece of paper and go, okay, that enemy got hit once. Okay, he got hit twice. Boom, that one's down. Okay, this one got hit twice. That one's down. And if they get hit twice, boom, I'm not even tracking HP,
Right.
nothing. It's just enough to get them worried and thinking
Yeah.
strategically about how to move on the battlefield.
Right.
So yeah, that's what two hitters is what I call them.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I've heard what's his face, Matt Colville talk about this sort of thing too. He's got a lot of ideas about homebrewing monsters. He reckons that monsters are either the D&D monster manual monsters are either bags of hit points or they have very high armor classes. It tends to be one or the other.
Yeah.
And if you want to make things fucking deadly, then you give them both.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I think is interesting is like some of the creatures in the monster manual more or less have descriptions about how to run them. And knowing how to run creatures is kind of important. Like looking at the stat block on the fly is fine. And I do that a lot. And in fact, almost always. But at the same time, if you've gone through the stat block prior to the fight, prior to the session, and you've had a chance to actually think about how am I going to use this monster and how am I going to use it in conjunction with the other creatures in the encounter, because they can really tie things up that way. And you can put on more or less pressure depending on how tactically you want them to think. A group of goblins that are not being tactical are pathetic. But a group of goblins that have got their shit together and a plan can fuck you up.
Yeah.
Like, they really can. I mean, you can use things like grappling and grabbing and I was talking about that restraining stuff before, shoving people and all those actions that nobody even thinks to use, like the dodge action, stuff like that. They can hold actions just the same way as players can.
Yeah.
And doing those things and thinking about it and having a kind of a battle plan for them is really important. Sometimes having a schedule in your head about when on round 3, the goblin boss is going to come through this door with 2 more of his companions. And in round 8, he's going to drink a potion of healing.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not round 8 because fights never last that long, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Giving them potions and stuff like that is useful.
That's actually something I didn't have in my notes, which I'm glad you brought up, is thinking about the encounter in rounds as well. Because you can, let's say we have our party of 4. We start off with the ogre thinking, one ogre's good. Like, I don't want this to be too difficult of a fight. But then
Right.
you realize real quickly in the first round that, oh, they're going to decimate this ogre. So then you quickly on the fly go, okay, round 2, now we're going to add the goblins, right? You can start kind
Right.
of thinking this encounter in rounds and adding things or
Yeah.
taking them away as you need to keep
Right.
beefing this up.
Right. And you can have them flee as well, right? They
You can
can
have
run
them flee,
away.
yeah.
In real life,
So
hardly anybody wants to fight to the death. Let's face it.
yeah, that's true. um, Another thing, real quick, to mess around with is size. I find it really funny that, especially with new players, whenever they come across a really big, epic monster, they're always surprised that the AC is a lot lower than they think. But it makes sense
Right.
because they're bigger and they're slower, and of course you can hit them.
Right.
But if you make a monster smaller, their AC goes up because they're harder to hit. And so sometimes I really like to throw tiny or small creatures
Right.
my players, because it's frustrating to them. It's just this little annoyance again that's hard to hit,
Right.
so they can't really do the damage that they want to do, but you're able to
Right.
kind of like poke at them and really get their motors going. But okay,
You
so
can give
here's
them magic items you mentioned before too,
yeah,
like things of invisibility.
yes,
Invisible monsters are a real pain in the ass.
yeah, because usually the players will like hold their turn until they can see them again, or
Yeah. Yeah.
something to that effect. Yeah, giving your monsters the ability to go invisible or any
Yeah.
of those extra abilities, really helpful.
Yeah.
So here's one of the tricks that I do, especially if we're talking about scaling,
Yeah.
is I don't like to go into an encounter with a monster that I think is already going to be deadly. I would rather start light and do some of these things that we've already talked about mid battle, okay? Like, add extra enemies. Or now here's the thing, because I don't want to be unfair to my players. So anything that goes off in round 1, it still needs to be like, you can't just all of a sudden say, well, now my monster has spells. Like, you didn't, if
Right.
you
You didn't set that up.
yeah, I mean, I guess you kind of could, like, maybe in the first round they didn't cast a spell, and now in the
Right.
second round they're gonna. But just be very mindful of what you're adding, that it doesn't look like you are just out to beat your party.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Well,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I find
so
that scrolls are quite good for this. Actually, I had a cleric of, what was it? Orc Hand of Luthic pulls out a dispel magic frickin' scroll in the middle of a fight to get rid of somebody's moonbeam.
mm-hmm.
Didn't work, but it was something, and it added flavor to the fight, and it added tension, which was pretty cool.
Oh, I love this.
So,
Upright Man says,
you know,
carry a bag of flour for invisible creatures.
right? Yeah.
I actually have a character baker in mind that I might have to just always carry a bag of flour now. Even that's gonna be
Right.
great. Okay, so that's my trick for scaling up monsters. Is I start. I don't want to say I start low. I start in the medium to high area, usually in the medium area, and then I will consider what can I do to scale this encounter up if I need to. Okay, without
Right.
breaking immersion, without making it look like I'm cheating with my monster and giving them extra stuff on the fly.
Right.
So consider that. Now, I also will consider. I feel like I wrote these notes up and now I'm kind of going out of order, so I hope this is not going to mess you up too much. But I also will consider the terrain that they're in, because not only can you scale up the monster, but you can scale up the terrain. You can maybe, like right now my players are in a very rocky mountainous area, so if the fighting gets pretty heated, there could maybe be a rock slide that happens during one of the rounds. There could
Right.
be an earthquake. There could be so consider your terrain and think, okay, if they're having too
So,
much of an easy time, let's throw a rock slide their way and see how they deal with that and the monster.
exactly. I mean, and where you place the fight, the terrain itself is so important. A bridge is a very different thing to a field.
hmm
Somewhere where there's a door or a portal or an entrance or a tunnel makes a huge amount of difference. There's nowhere to run. That changes everything. And you set the players so that they can only be two abreast. And similarly for the monsters, they can only be two abreast. It changes a lot. They can't surround you so easily. It's much harder to get advantage and flank and stuff like that.
Right. Right. Yeah, and aside from terrain, you could add aggressive weather. Now, I wouldn't like
What does that
just
mean?
I mean, I wouldn't describe like you're fighting and it's a sunny day and now all of a sudden there's a downpour, like unless you can make that make sense in your world. But if you have already started, like plan to start your encounter where there's some weather that you can then build upon if you need to.
Right.
Makes sense? Um,
Yeah.
so start the encounter where there's clouds in the sky and you can hear like a distant thunder.
Mm.
It may or may not result in anything during the encounter, but if you need
Yeah.
it, it's there.
Right.
Um,
Exactly. You can tweak that as you go. You've
yeah.
set it up. If you set it up, you can't really have like a don't mention the weather and all of a sudden there's a storm.
Hmm.
But if you set up that there's possibly a storm brewing, then it's an option now.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. That's what I think and I didn't think I had a word for it before, but as a DM, you're going to set this stuff up so that if you need it, you got it. But if you don't
Mm.
need it, they won't know the difference.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, that's right. It just turns out to be flavor then, doesn't it?
Right, right. Layer actions now. Layer
Hmm.
actions tend to be like if you are, you're going to go fight a dragon or a big epic monster, you usually go into their lair. But that
Right.
doesn't mean that you can't have layer actions. You're in the forest and you're looking for that ogre, right? But you could kind of throw in some layery type actions in the forest. A tree cracks and falls in the. Again, this is kind of using the terrain and weather, but I just kind
Right.
of also counted. I'll look up layer actions and see like what are some
What
things.
what do they have?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what do they have in this terrain? Or you can use
Right.
like wild magic surges. Make sure
Right.
you set it up before the
I,
fight.
I have an interesting take on layer actions. Actually, I'm just going to throw this in.
Yeah.
You can give layer actions to, for example, I recently gave layer actions to some guards. You wouldn't think guards would have layer actions, but the thing is, if you encounter a bunch of guards on the street, they are going to fight one way and have so many options. But if you are fighting them in the actual palace where they hang out and where their guards, their friends, and so on are,
Mm-hmm.
they have access to more armor and ammunition and weapons, and they can do stuff like blow horns and call more enemies, and they know the terrain. They know this is their lair.
Mm-hmm.
So individuals that might fight differently out in standard terrain are going to fight differently in their own home territory. Somebody that's fighting in their own house, even if they're like a first level halfling rogue, knows where the short sword is hidden behind the fireplace. Stuff like that. Or they
Yeah.
can do things that relate to their abodes, if you like.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I love that with the layer action. I didn't think about that. Like, yeah, being John Wick hiding like weapons in the hiding
Right. Or
weapons in this
traps.
house. Traps. Yeah.
Right. Pull the lever and the place fills with fire or something, or the floor
Right.
collapses or whatever. You've set it up.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't necessarily have to add that into a monster's stat block, but if you're home brewing something specifically, then you might as well, so that it's right in front of you while you're DMing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that kind of ties into the next idea I had, which is throwing puzzles into the combat. Now, there's a lot of ways you can interpret that. My original idea was going to be like I threw my players into an encounter where they were fighting a monster that they knew was going to be too strong for them to destroy. And
Right.
that the only way out of this encounter was to solve this puzzle, which would then kind of like they would teleport out of this area and no longer
Right.
be in the area. And so that was an interesting encounter because they're fighting, or they're defending at least, and trying to
Right.
kind of like fight, but really the whole point is the puzzle, but it's still combat. So that was interesting. But I
Mm.
like your idea of like the lever. You could be in a combat situation and have like a Home Alone style traps or something involved that maybe
Right.
they see it and they could
Right.
identify
Exactly.
and use it in the combat.
See, there's a kid with lair actions.
Yes,
He doesn't have a lot of actions, but he's got a lot of lair actions.
I love it. Oh, going back to the invisible creatures, I see everybody's got some ideas for invisible creatures.
Right.
Sand, yep, animal companion that can sniff them out.
I'm really fond of making homebrew creatures that have sort of work together. I mean, I was talking about last week, I think I was talking about the red fangs of Shargas. I made these elite red fangs of Shargas. And they're really just buffed up standard red fangs, but I also buffed up the bats, the giant bats that they fly on. And I created a situation in both the stat blocks that relate to each other. So when they're working together, they can do extra stuff. So what, when you've got a elite red fang riding an elite, the bat can use its bonus action on the red fang's turn to give them the dodge action. So the bat can dodge for the red fang as long as the red fang's on the bat.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then a legendary action where they can jump off the bat and do awesome amounts of damage with that first attack. But that then puts them on the ground, so they no longer have the bat. But yeah.
Yeah. So
that's my take on that.
Yeah, I love, I mean, so hopefully, guys, I'm telling you, there's all these different things you can tweak and add kind of on the fly, but also think about setting it up pre-encounter so that they're there for you if you need them. But now we've already talked about like, add this, give your monster this.
Right.
What about taking away? We talked about difficult terrain, and you mentioned a bridge. Imagine if the bridge started collapsing in the middle of the encounter, right? So now they're fighting, but they're also trying to how do I not fall down this ravine? You can take things away. And then I thought, if you have a party, for example, the game that I run, we have a lot of magic users who kind of have, what do they call them? Like Deus Ex Machina moves sometimes in these combats. And it's all because of magic. And so if you find yourself with a party that has a lot of magic users, maybe come up with a reason why there would be some anti-magic fields on the battlefield, or maybe the entire battlefield is anti-magic, and they need to be a little bit more creative. I mean, that could be difficult, but
if you want your casting NPCs to be able to really sustain themselves for more than a couple of rounds, and you've got magic users on the field, you must give them dispel magic.
Yeah,
it's really, without it, they're significantly weaker.
Yeah. They're very squishy. So that's why be careful about it. And again, consider if you're going to add any of these things, take any of these things away, just consider what's the worst case scenario, for them, and what's the best case scenario, and just plan for both. Put something in there, set it up so that you can plan for both, and then just, if you need it, kick it off. Or don't.
Yeah, and the other thing too, like one of my mistakes that I always make when I'm running spellcasters is I often forget to cast mage armor on the first turn.
Right.
So you either have to go, oh, they did it before the fight started, but then you've got to justify that they knew the fight was going to start.
Yeah.
Or you have to take an action to do it on the first round, or if it's partway through the fight, they've got to stop and cast mage armor, which is extremely annoying for you as a DM or for the character. They surely would have thought of this, but you didn't do it, so you have to go along with it. So yeah, and that's one of my common mistakes, is forgetting that. Now that
all personnel report to the nearest tornado shelter.
Oh, I think we're on.
Are we on?
I think we're
on. Are we back? Are we alive?
Hey, chat, come find us again, please.
Come and find us again. I don't know what the hell happened there.
Yeah.
Just more tech issues. The tech gods, they are testing us. This is challenge rating 20 stuff.
Is it? It is. It is. Okay. All right.
Something went.
That was me. I was just getting all the other things back up and running.
Make sure I've got you muted over there. Yes.
We have one viewer. Hopefully our viewers are coming back.
Come
back and join us.
Come back.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Well, let's keep it going because everyone will just find us on YouTube, or yeah, on YouTube, and they can catch back up if they need to. But shoot, where we were talking about anti-magic fields, squishy magic
Right,
people. Okay.
right.
Uh,
Spelling magic.
yes.
Yep.
Okay, so I wanted to touch on real quick. Where were we? We're down to homebrewing monsters.
Right.
Okay.
Like we're talking
So,
about coming up from the beginning, from nothing.
yes. So, everything we've talked about so far was like scaling, taking an existing monster and then just adding some tweaks or taking something away to change up the difficulty, right? And also how to know when. Like, if you've got your party, you went through the first round, they're just breezing through it, that's when you know, okay? Add
Right.
in a little bit of that difficulty. If you get through that first round and somebody's already down, then you know that maybe you need to find a reason to scale something down a bit
Right.
to help your party. So
Right.
that's scaling. Okay, now homebrewing a monster completely from scratch. Let's talk about that. How do you start homebrewing your monsters? Where do you start?
Homebrewing a monster from completely from scratch. Well, I mean, you have to have some sort of inspiration for it, don't you? And it depends what the campaign is and what the general gist of the storyline is and the terrain and all of that sort of stuff. Where are these people? I mean, are we talking about, you're going to ask the question whether or not this is the big bad evil guy, or is this going to be just a mob that's, fairly low level kind of trash mob, to use um, World of Warcraft terms. Not that I actually play World of Warcraft these days, but yeah, I don't honestly homebrew a lot of monsters from scratch in Dungeons and Dragons. I do scale them. I do put tweaks on them. The most of see that's the thing, and a lot of my campaigns are very humanoid based anyway. Like I talk about a lot of orcs, for
Yeah.
example, or certain types of guards or orders of wizards, for example. I homebrew wizards, a lot of different types of wizards, all the different types of wizards of the Barakyle Envoy, for example. I've got like necromancers and war mages and archons and illusionists and spies. And I recently homebrewed the Quasit, sort of readjusted the Quasit, because
I
the
love the
Quasit is
Quasit.
such a cool creature,
It's
and
so
there's
fun.
but right, but once they've been spotted, they don't pose much of a threat, which is good. They shouldn't.
Yeah.
But I did tweak them up a little bit just to make them last more than one attack, because at this point players just swipe one hit and they're gone. That's, they've got like 7 hit points or something.
Yeah.
So I made them a little bit tougher. These are the Barakyle Envoys Quasits, so they're special Quasits. They've learned how to summon slightly more powerful ones. um, I've rehome brewed the Tanarok, which is a demon that has been created from an orc, and I've made this one called the Ungor Tanarok because it's from the Ungor Ma'ak Empire, and so they're a little bit more powerful. So finding the inspiration generally comes from, what do you need, and from your experience of the game. Um, in my case, it's a case of I've telegraphed the idea that this creature is going to turn up at some point in the campaign, and then by the time it turns up, the players are actually too high level for it to be that challenging.
Right.
So that's when I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to scale this thing up and make it tougher, or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think that really understanding the stat block, that's actually quite hard. When you look at the original creatures, make sure that you do understand the stat block properly, because you might not have to tweak them up. Sometimes it's a case of you can be more tactful with them, or tactical with the creature. Tanaroks are a good example because they have certain abilities that make them fucking powerful. If, all by them. Somebody just entered chat.
Yes.
Yeah, they're super powerful all by themselves, and so scaling them up, you have to be really careful, because you might be halfway through the combat and go, oh, wait a minute, this thing has this reaction that does this thing that's going to fuck everybody up, and it's already there. Why wouldn't I use that? So you don't necessarily always have to scale things up when you make sure that you understand the stat block from the beginning.
Right.
I guess other forms of inspiration, I use a lot of AI art. I make a lot of AI art just for fun, mostly. I create a lot of NPC figures and sometimes monsters and things. And some of those have been quite inspiring. And I certainly have got some ideas for homebrewing creatures along those lines. I like to go through the monster manuals and such and look for different powers that already exist. I created a guard recently that they have normal sort of things, a crossbow and a longsword type of deal. They're just city guards kind of stuff, but I realized a few months ago that the Archer stat block in the Monster Manual is fucking powerful. It's like challenge rating 3 for an Archer is hell powerful. And they've got this thing called Archer's Eye they can use 3 times a day, where immediately after making an attack roll or a damage roll with a ranged weapon, the Archer can add a d10 and add the number rolled to the total. So it's either to the attack roll or the damage. It is hell powerful. They can do it 3 times.
Yeah.
So, and they have a lot of hit points too. So I thought, well, I'm going to take that and add that to my guard but he has a crossbow and a longsword, and they can do that with either the crossbow or the longsword, not just the longbow, which makes it a bit more interesting. Things like this particular guard gains advantage to attack rolls when they are within 5 feet of another guard of their own type, as long as they have shields, and they don't always have to have shields. So that's some of the that's the sort of stuff I'm doing with homebrew creatures mostly at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, AI art I'm still new to, but I've
Right.
seen some of the AI art that you've done, and it's like, yeah, that's pretty inspiring just to randomly throw in some words to like an art
Yeah,
bot
yeah.
and see what it comes up with and go, oh gosh, that looks terrifying. That's a monster. Here we go.
Right. Absolutely. Just come up with some words and themes and ideas and sort of some words that are adjacent to those words and themes
Hmm.
and some words about lenses and camera style and shit as well, and you get a more interesting picture.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then we talked about this, I think it was during the skills challenges episode, but
Right.
I get inspired by a lot in the real world. I'll see
Yeah.
something and I just go, man, that is so cool. And then I immediately think about how I can put that into my game. Like I
Right.
watched that documentary with like elephants and then little birds flying around the elephants. And that's how I came up with this idea for the
Right.
encounter of this gargantuan creature and little
Right.
tiny creatures that they have to fight or find or what have you, and not
Right.
get trampled by this gargantuan creature. So you can get inspired by just about anything. Find what inspires you,
Well,
and
you
then
can take mushrooms.
yeah,
No,
you
no,
could.
no, I'm just kidding. Nobody should do that. Don't take illicit drugs. I'm just
But then, so if you're starting from scratch, right? If I'm starting from scratch, that's what I start with the concept of the
Yeah.
monster. It's going to be a gargantuan something, right? And I want it to be able to stomp, and I want it to be able. Okay, so now what I would do is I go search through the monster manual and try to find a close stat block. So again, I can make sure I'm covering all my bases when it comes to how much HP should a creature like this have? What should the
Right.
AC be? What kind of abilities should I consider for a creature this
Mm.
big? All
Right.
those things kind of, it's almost again kind of like taking those existing stat blocks and scaling them kind
And
of sorta.
the other thing is that you've been playing in your campaign as a DM for a while now, right? So you've seen how your players do stuff, and you
Yeah.
know what kind of ACs they can hit, and you know what kind of damage they can deal out. You know what spells they have and what kind of tactics they use. And
Mhm.
often it's the tactics that they use might actually inspire you to mess with their action economy or mess with their
Right.
tactics somehow. Find
You
a
know?
way to get in there
Could
and
you
force them to play differently.
Sorry. I was just thinking we were talking about, make your monsters have the ability to go invisible, and I was thinking, my
Right.
god, a gargantuan invisible creature would be
Oh yeah.
fantastic. All you
Oh
just
yeah.
see is a big giant footprint that shows up right next to you.
Right. Yeah.
That's
For sure.
amazing.
I have one of those actually.
That is, oh god, so fun. Okay, so how to homebrew. Get your monster concept, whether it's art, your idea, something that you saw in a documentary. Find a stat block so you can start thinking about all the
Yeah.
stats, and then tweak as need be. Like
Also, just want to take one step back. Myths, legends, stories, movies, comic books.
yeah,
But I find especially going back to those archetypal things that we get from myths and legends and old stories, and even religion. That's a fantastic place to start because there's so much pathos behind those types of entities
yeah.
that you can bring in. You can look up things like, and I don't necessarily recommend this to everyone, but things like the Keys of Solomon, the Goetia, which is basically a list of demons. Um, Go into things like the lists of angels and things, and find out what they're the angels of this, that, and the other thing. There's all sorts of real life um, entities that you can find and develop into something. You can change the names, but you might want to keep a core concept or merge it with something else. Be careful, the stuff all goes in here and slips into your subconscious and can come out and bite you on the ass.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I'm trying to think if we thought of everything as far as home brewing. Oh, I did want to cover real quick as a DM, because if you're not following a written adventure and or you start throwing homebrew monsters or scaled monsters, make sure you consider oscillating between easy encounters and hard encounters. You don't
Yeah.
want to just pummel your party all the time. Yes, it is a lot of fun as a player to know that you're fighting this epic monster, and then the next encounter is another epic monster, and then the next encounter is another epic monster, and it starts to get a little like meh. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's a lot of fun to be a player knowing that you're fighting 100 goblins and it takes 1 or 2 hits to kill the goblins, but it's so much fun to just feel powerful and be like, ha, I
Right.
killed 5 of them, how many did you kill, like.
Right.
So
I mean,
make sure
well,
you
I had a
oscillate.
yeah, I had a player in the Vein Gate Chronicles. She's a cleric and she has a Mace of Disruption.
Hmm.
And the thing is, the Mace of Disruption is great, but it's not that useful most of the time. It's good, but it's not amazing. But then we had this one encounter with a bunch of undead, very low level undead creatures, and she was just annihilating them. And she had so much fun doing that.
Hmm.
So I guess if you've got a player who's got a particular type of damage that the other players don't have, that they don't get to use very often,
Hmm.
that can be really fun for the players because they finally get to shine in a way where the other players are like, my hits aren't doing any damage, but yet the cleric's wandering around just smashing the shit out of multiple skeletons and undead all at the same
Yeah, the
time.
undead was what I was going to bring up. Yeah, clerics always
Right,
have that, turn undead. And if you
right,
have a whole campaign with no undead, they're going to feel unfulfilled. So,
right. I mean, you can have fiends or something instead, but
right.
and I have a lot of fiends in my game, and that will be something that I'm going to be developing more of.
Mwahaha. All right, so here's where we're going to get into just a few tips and tricks. Again, I mean, we've pretty much talked about scaling and homebrewing, but here's just a few things, okay? So there are online calculators that you can use so that you can input everything but the CR. So if you're homebrewing a monster and you just
Yeah,
want to know what CR to assign it, you can enter all the stats and then it will calculate the CR, okay? You can
right,
also do the reverse, which is like you can put in like the CR, or you can put in a monster that exists already, and then the tool will scale up or scale down. You can tell it, like, I want this level 4 monster to really be level 16. How do we scale that up?
right,
And it will
right.
automatically do that for you. So there's tons of
Wow.
online tools that you can Google and search for. There is also, if you go on the D&D Beyond website, there's
Yeah.
the actual calculation, which I don't know, it's just not as fun. It's a lot of work, but you can.
Right, but
It
it's
has
there.
the math.
It's worth reading through that
Yeah,
calculation
it
just so
is.
that you've done it once.
Yeah,
Maybe you
so
don't have
you
to
have
use
your
it every time, but
basic
there is a
understanding.
calculation. Yeah.
Right. Now, I'm going to get into a few things here real quick because I've talked about how to know when to scale up, but then
Right.
how do you know when to scale down, right? If I had to
Right.
scale down an encounter, and I did talk about, round one, somebody's down. Oh no, I
Yeah.
made my monster a little too OP, right? Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So
Yeah.
here's the thing that I do. This is only if so. I'll use the basic like I want to throw a medium monster at them for most encounters, or I'll throw a
Yeah.
medium encounter. But if I know because the story and the narrative that they're going to have an
Mhm.
epic battle, I this is what I do. My husband's probably listening. But this is what I do.
Block your
I
ears.
I plan I don't just choose to create a difficult monster or whatever. Basically,
Right.
I plan my encounter so that it is difficult enough, and I wait until at least one person is down.
Yeah.
And then I start finding ways to scale down my encounter. But I basically create a difficult encounter on the fly. Uh-oh, did I lose Russell again? Uh-oh. Okay, we're going to, real quick, guys. 1 second. Here we
Here we
are.
go.
Here we are. I'm going to retransition here. Okay. Boy, we're just having difficulties tonight, guys. I'm really sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So I start off with I make sure my encounter is very difficult. Round one, at least, I'm going to telegraph to them that they're going into a difficult encounter. I make sure
Right.
round one shows you're in for it. And then
Yeah.
I just keep pounding them with this difficult encounter the way that I've set it up until one person goes down. At least one
Right.
person. Now,
Right.
depending on the narrative, I might
Yep.
wait until two people are down. I want this to be like a holy shit moment.
Yeah, we're
What are
all
we
gonna
gonna
die.
do?
This is
Right?
gonna be a TPK. We're fucked. Ah.
Yeah. Now, I won't do the like, I guess it depends on my monster. Most of my
Yeah.
monsters aren't smart enough to go, that person's down. I'm going to go over there and stab them for 2 death saves, right? Like, I'm not going to be
Right.
brutal, but I am going to give them the sense that this is dangerous and you
Also,
have one or two people down.
on that side note, I find that a lot of people argue about, well, they're already down. Why wouldn't you kill them? There's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't go and finish them off. You don't know they're not dead for a start. They're
Right.
lying down, covered in blood. They look like they're dead. They're unconscious. Why
Right.
would you start doing extra damage to a dead creature when you're being attacked by 4 other people? You've got better things to do. The action economy doesn't make any sense to do that.
Right.
That's the most obvious answer to that. But anyway, please
Yeah.
continue.
No,
Sorry.
yeah. So basically, I start off with the difficult encounter. I pound them until 1 or 2 are down, and then I will find ways to scale the encounter back or find a reason, like you said, maybe something happens. A guard comes in and tells, like maybe they're fighting a humanoid. They're fighting an evil queen. A guard comes in and telegraphs some kind of message, and now the queen needs to leave, and now leaves
Right.
a monster behind to finish the battle. And now
Right.
this
So
monster
their
isn't as
priorities
good.
change.
Right. So that's just one example, but whatever narrative you can find to scale back the encounter after you've got 1 or 2 people down, that's
Right.
enough to give them an encounter that feels
Yeah.
very difficult.
Story
that's-
reasons
Right,
work
story
much better
reasons.
than just pulling out shit out of your ass,
Right.
What's the
So
story reason?
that's my trick for scaling up and scaling down. And then the other thing I saw online, which I've heard of this before, but I've never really thought about it. I really should look into it. Is if you're going to homebrew a monster, make sure that monster's max damage per 1 turn is not more than the HP of your highest player, right? Because then that.
Right.
But now you can see how the math makes sense. That like, in 1 turn I could easily kill the
Yeah.
strongest player in the group. Then you know that you need to scale that back a bit.
Yeah, for sure. For
So-
sure. Yeah, I mean that is very interesting, and it does bring into question the concept of fudging dice rolls and such. I mean, at the end of the day, especially if you've homebrewed something, or even if you've just built the encounter and not thought too hard about it, you can easily put characters in situations that you didn't mean to. It was not your objective to kill them, and you've created a situation where they're in fucking grave danger. And if you play it rules as written, they will die. So you do need a story reason or some sort of Deus Ex Machina to get them out of it, or sometimes you might just say they swing and they miss,
Yeah.
or something like that. We didn't talk about saving throws, actually. That's another thing that's
Oh
really
yeah,
important
we
on
didn't.
homebrewing
You're
creatures,
right.
because their saving throws versus spells and stuff, that makes a huge difference sometimes, you know.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, take a look at all those stats, as saving throws we didn't think of, but
Mm.
any one of those stats you can tweak, and then just make sure that if you're throwing what you think is a dangerous encounter, that you've telegraphed it beforehand.
Yeah.
We've already talked about setting up your encounter so that you can take it one way or the other. Um, you've already touched on making sure that we're focusing on what's fun and that you're not being the DM that's just out to beat your players, because
Right.
that
That's
may be
pretty
fun for you as
tedious.
the DM, but it's not as much fun for your players.
Yeah, exactly. You're not really a dungeon master. You're more of a dungeon apprentice.
Right. Yep. I like that. Yeah. You have much learning to do.
Yes.
And then I want to tie this back because it's a good thing you talked about your PC deaths and
Mm.
mitigating or preventing PC deaths, because I had a point and it literally just whoop. What is it?
Well, while you're thinking of that, I was going to
Yeah.
say that the players can always run away.
Yeah.
They don't have to fight all the time. It's not required. A lot of players seem to think that it's like, oh, we're playing D&D, we have to fight the creature. And I've been at work all week selling cell phones or whatever they do, or whatever this, they could be scientists or astronauts, but whatever. They
Mm-hmm.
come to the game to get away from their lives, so they're more likely to take big risks in the game because they want it to be exciting. And they kind of have to trust you as the DM to make it exciting,
Yeah.
or they're going to take it into their own hands and do silly things, which means often taking risks until you've beaten that out of them by killing off their characters over and over and over again.
Well, see, I feel like some players or player groups don't know that that's an option, and I think as a
Yeah.
DM it would be helpful if it's their first time in an encounter where that they're in over their head, or that you can only scale it back so much and they're hurting now.
Hmm.
Then what you can do as a DM is find a way to telegraph to them that they can run away. What if there's
Right.
an NPC that's off in the sidelines that's like, "Psst, hey, like come this way," and that's a
Right.
quick prompt of, oh, we can
Right.
actually leave this encounter. Find a way
Exactly.
narratively to telegraph to your players that that's an option. And I'm willing to bet you
Even if
that
it's an
you do it
investigation check.
right. Willing to bet if you do it once, then they will always consider that in future encounters that are tough.
Yeah, and if it should always be an option. Running away is always an option. It's
Yeah.
fighting is rarely anybody's first option or choice
Yeah.
in the world. We only fight when we're cornered or we really really want something, and that thing that we want is worth more to us than the dilemma of murdering somebody to get it. you know.
Okay. That thing that I was thinking of, I think I already covered it, and that's why my brain just went zoop, because it was all just about, PC death. But yeah, anyway.
Right.
All right. So I think that leads us into our weekly world building.
Ta-da.
Yeah, ta-da. And so I know we lost some viewers because of the technical difficulties. I'm really sorry, but if you guys are still out there, I'm going to ask for your help. Okay, I am going to explain to you some monsters that I am going to build, that I'm going to homebrew. Sorry, my brain just whew. Anyway, I'm going to homebrew some monsters, and I'm going to ask for some help building this. And if you're in the chat and you want to provide some info, shout it out, and I might put that in, and then I'm going to run this by my players, I think, soon. And when that happens, I will report on it in a future episode. So here we go. Okay. Right now, my players are in a mountainous, rocky area. And the way that I described it to them, at least in this immediate area they're in, if you've ever seen the movie or heard of the movie 127 Hours, I think it is, this guy gets lost in like this kind of canyon that he's hiking all by himself. And it's like windy tunnels. And sometimes it's open air, but sometimes you're kind of like beneath the rocks. And anyway, that's this immediate area. And so I'm looking for some monsters. I need one monster specifically. I'm looking for a big, sturdy, some kind of a monster that would be in mountains and canyons that is also touched by the shadow realm. And what I mean by that is I want them to get some kind of feeling that this monster looks familiar to them but different. What's different? Something about the shadow realm, because that's what's going on in my world right now. Is the shadow realm seems to be kind of merging with or coming into the material plane.
It's like
So
the Shadowfell is bleeding across.
something to that effect. They haven't quite figured out
Right.
exactly what's happening. So I don't know. You tell me. If you guys are in the chat, I know we've got a few people. Oh, my husband said mountain goat. Okay. I mean, now, what if it's like a huge mountain goat? I don't know if I'm actually going to do a mountain goat, but I love this.
An undead huge mountain goat.
Oh my gosh. And I do actually kind of like that. I don't know how big, I mean, because dire goats are pretty big, right? I want it to be bigger. I want a monster that's like
it's bred by giants or something.
Like bear size monster.
Right.
So I guess a mountain goat could.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
yeah.
let's just stick with that. Let's just say mountain goat, because that's just this exercise. They don't know what I'm actually going to throw at them. All right, so we're going to do some huge... Sorry, technically I guess it would be a large, right? Mountain goat. That has somehow been touched by the shadow realm. So what would this monster do that would give them the idea? Like there's like shadow step. There's...
Well,
Go ahead.
Do you want my feedback here?
Yes, please.
Well, it could have diseases. It could pass diseases. It could be full of maggots.
I love the maggots.
It could be sort of a corpse-like thing. I mean, I'm going with the undead thing because I'm thinking of the Shadowfell and the death domains and what have you. So it could have diseases, or maybe not poison, but something like that.
Yes.
That it could be covered in flies that do something of their own, like a swarm of flies.
Oh my gosh, you're touching on to something I was going to ask about next, which, remember I said I like to throw one monster and then a bunch of little monsters in the case I need it. And so the bunch of little monsters could be like, oh, could you just imagine like swarms of things like flying out of its body?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Right. And it could have a pretty nasty bite too that imparts, a saving throw against, like a con save or something. And if you fail the con save, you end up with some sort of disadvantage or disease that does something to you. It gives you a level of exhaustion, or I don't know. Then now you're homebrewing diseases, but that's another thing.
Right.
But or you could choose something that already exists.
But see, now this is great because this is what I love to do when I homebrew encounters. Is I've got one large creature. And I have my second set of monsters are small, right? So they're going to be harder to hit, and they fly. So that changes their range of motion and what's
dimensional,
high, low,
space.
Dimensional space.
Yep.
Okay, so let's see here. Avery says creatures that give you a second shadow before consuming you. Ooh. Count the shadows. Ooh. Oh,
I have another thought.
Your wife said leper mountain goat. Oh my gosh, could you imagine?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm getting really excited. Two different things. Okay, so first I'll get back to the shadows in a minute, Avery. But this leper mountain, can you imagine they come across mountain goats that look normal? But if they like start touching them, messing with them, like pieces of skin start sloughing off. Oh my God. My ploughers hate me because I do a lot of body horror in my game and I don't mean to.
Nice.
I just find it so fascinating. Oh my God. Pieces of skin start sloughing off and then they're attacked by swarms. And now the goats turn around and it's like the music video Thriller. And now they're like dead mountain.
I've got an idea for you. You want to put a puzzle into this situation?
Uh-huh.
What if it had a collar, and if you could get the collar off it, it would diffuse it. It would because the collar is causing the undead creatures, making it into this thing. If you take the collar off it, its powers sort of dissipate.
Huh.
But you have to figure that out. It could even have a bell that does something like toll the dead. What
Oh,
if like a goat with a bell that
the
did toll the dead?
bell is interesting. I like it. Toll the
Bells are
dead.
very shadowy, Shadowfell, Shadow Realm, death kind of symbol.
I love it. I love it. Okay, I've got to get back to Avery real quick with the
Sorry.
shadows. I love the idea of the second shadow. I think
Mm.
that has to be maybe a different encounter. That is so conniving. I love it that I want it to be like a humanoid enemy that they fight.
Enemy. An
um,
enemy.
but I'm gonna type this down somewhere because I'm gonna think about how I can implement this second shadow. I love that idea. I love the leper mountain goat so much. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I love it.
Oh, Helen.
Let's see what else. Oh my god, you guys, keep them coming. Okay, so right now we have large mountain goat, maggots, undead, diseases. I love the idea of diseases. I have actually been thinking about homebrewing some
Oops.
diseases. Oops.
You're in and out, in and out.
Uh-oh.
We have to think about reactions and bonus actions and lair actions as well.
Yeah.
What's
Ooh.
this thing's lair about?
No, the layer actions are going to be the shadow realm because if you remember what I described in my previous games, there's this huge dragon, which is the BBEG's dragon, and its breath weapon is that it opens portals into and out of the shadow realm. And so, literally, right now, what they're seeing in the material plane is these black holes that just kind of keep opening up everywhere at various, on the ground, in the sky, and things from the shadow realm are eking out into the material plane. So, what if part of the layer actions is that these black circles are starting to like show up in the middle of the battlefield? Well, no, because then that means the dragon's here. I don't know. I have to
Dun,
think about
dun,
this.
dun.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I have to think about this.
I mean, goats have pretty scary screams, actually. I mean, there's this whole trope about goats have this kind of human scream.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I
Maybe that
love
could
it.
be, right? That could be like a special action that it has on a
Ooh. And
recharge. Do you
it
know what I mean?
deafens
Like
them, maybe. They
maybe
scream
it
and it
deafens
deafens
them,
them.
or it causes fear, or both.
Okay, so Avery told me to Google Vashta Narada. Oh,
I just
yes!
picked that up,
I
right?
remember this episode from Doctor Who. I was wondering why it sounded familiar. Oh, I love it. Yes. Okay, so if you haven't watched Doctor Who, for anybody who's watching
Yep.
the show, boy, I don't even know how to explain Vashta Narada. Google it.
Yeah,
Because I'm
you
not going
better
to get
Google
into
it.
that. Yeah,
It's a bit too complex to try and
it
outline
is.
here,
And I
but
don't want to ruin it because you just got to
it's
watch the
interesting.
episode. It's a good episode. All
It's a good
right.
point.
So okay, I think I like where this is at right now. I do want to maybe give the swarms of flies some shadow aspect to it, shadow realm
Right,
aspect.
right. I mean, the flies
So they're
could
not just
could
flies.
merge into a being of their own or something, and then dissipate, and that'd be very fucking hard to hit.
Say that again. They merge
If the
into.
flies, the flies could merge into a shadow or into a being or something like a more complicated single entity,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then come apart, kind of like a hive or something like that. I don't know. That's just a thought, but I don't
Hmm.
know. I like the idea of lots of buzzing flies being extremely annoying,
Yeah.
um, and it also allows you to telegraph the creature a bit too.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the idea. I'm trying to think how we can like scale this up with the, terrain or the hazards. I'm wondering if these swarms can make it difficult to see. Maybe
Yeah,
they
right.
yeah,
Blindness,
like
or yeah, for sure.
blindness, kind of like a shadow aura
Think
kind
about
of thing.
conditions.
Yeah, conditions. They I mean, obviously with the diseases and stuff, we can do that.
Now, are you familiar with rot grubs?
No.
Challenge rating 1/2, armor class 8, 22 hit points. Rot grubs are finger-sized maggots. Now you could scale them down and make much smaller rot grubs and put them in a swarm, because you can get them as a swarm of rot grubs. Or you could just use them the way they are and just flavor them. And these things could be disgorged from the creature's mouth or something on a bite attack.
Say that again.
Or
That last part.
If you damage the creature or you hurt the creature, or if it bites you or something, or you touch it, it might give you these rot grubs.
Right.
Alternatively, you could make the rot grubs fly and then call them a swarm of flies.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh man, I cannot wait. You guys, I am going to throw this at them, and this is what I love is, even if they're listening, cuz I know my husband's listening, he has no idea how this is going to be put together, when it's going to happen, and when it does, I know he's going to laugh, but this is going to be great. I can't wait. Okay, let's see. Avery said there's an anime villain who controlled mosquitoes that fed on people and animals, then powered up by absorbing their collected blood. Ooh, blood.
You could heal the goat with the flies.
Ooh, I do love that. That's good. Okay, guys. Oh, you folks. I love you guys. All right, this is going to be great. So, got all the world building that I need for this. I'm going to put some stuff together. How fast does this go?
It's got to have a bite attack and a horn attack, right? Because it's a goat.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
right?
Like it can have
possibly hooves as well.
What's not is it rushing? What's the word I'm thinking of? Where you
charging, like a charge,
charge attack, jumping, obviously. Oh, I love the idea of terrain, doing like the rocky side terrain. Yeah,
has a climbing speed, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it might have a very fast climbing speed so it can get away and jump on rocks and stuff in a way the players can't keep up with it. It can get around them and flank them and stuff.
I love this. Okay.
Man.
I gotta take one note real quick before I forget it. Okay, until they. Okay. Anyway, all right. I don't want to say it out loud because I think they're listening. So I'm just going to keep that there. And anybody who's listening, keep an ear out. When are we playing next? I think we're playing mid-July, actually, for this. So you guys have a little bit of time to wait. But that gives me some time to really nail this encounter down and maybe change it up just a little bit so my husband doesn't know what's coming. And then in about a month, I will tell you all what happened. But I thank you guys for your input because this was fun. This was a lot of fun. All right.
The Catoblepus is another monster that has some powers you might want to look into.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the stat block for the Catoblepus right now, but it's fucking scary.
It's got such a funny name, doesn't it?
It does. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
I do know the one you're talking about. I actually just wrote something up on it the other day.
Oh, really?
But
right.
I can't remember anything about it, really, other than that it's a goat monster. Overlord called Dark Young. Okay. Ooh. Thank you, Avery. Okay. All right. So let's not beat this dead goat. And we'll move on. Okay. So anyway, folks, sorry this was a little bit of a longer episode, plus we had some technical difficulties. I appreciate you guys sticking with us. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Share us with your friends. Share the wonderful gift of dead goats with flying swarms coming out of them because they'll love it, right? Come check out all the other stuff that Dungeon Studios has and does. Come check us out on Facebook, on YouTube. We got some TikToks going out. When the podcast gets posted, it goes to Amazon, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all the other things. And then, of course, we are always on Discord, so come find us on Discord. We love to chat with our community, get ideas, and that's just where we're at all the time. So come say hi to us.
Yeah.
All right.
If you're interested in playing Dungeons and Dragons and such, you can come and find me on my Discord channel and YouTube and Twitch. And if you're interested in streaming on Twitch with me, I have a number of different streams available. Yes, so come and talk to me about that and such, like blah, 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 yada, yada.
and all
Links
the things, stuff and
around.
things.
Yeah.
All right.
Use
so
your imagination.
I'm gonna sign us out unless you got anything
Alright.
you want to do, and say these days can be fun days when you talk nerdy with friends. Nice and smooth. All right,
you
everybody.
go.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Goodbye.